Good afternoon, everyone. We are here with the DaBoyz Golden Sprue GT live stream, round 5. Here we have a great match scheduled for for all of the viewers. Both of these players, clubmates, ready to engage with one another. They've been practicing together for weeks, and one of them is ready to put down the other's dreams of that GT5-0. This game is going to be a bloodbath. We'll get into the players and the armies shortly. But first, I want to thank all the viewers for tuning in throughout the weekend. We've been streaming games of Age of Sigmar all throughout the event. This is going to be our final stream of the weekend. The player coming out of this will have a 5-0 record and will be a shoe-in for either the Best General or Best Overall award, depending on their respective hobby scores and sportsmanship scores for Best Overall. We'll talk a little bit more about the scoring, but a little bit about each of these players. I sit from a very privileged vantage point in the sense that I know both of these two players incredibly well. Oscar and Sean are both clubmates of mine. We've played a lot of practice games together, Sean being someone who effectively taught me how to play Age of Sigmar. Oscar being a consistent practice partner, someone I discuss lists with. We throw a lot of ideas back and forth. I played Oscar just the other day before this event to help him prepare. Played Sean last week as well. I probably play with each of these guys once a week at a minimum. I know them both incredibly well. We've all been friends for some time, and they've both put in a lot of work ahead of this event to navigate this field, a very combat-centric field of opponents out here, working their way through the field, making it to the final round here with an undefeated record each. A little bit of background on each in their prior tournament performances. Oscar has been playing Warhammer for some time, but been working really hard to step up to that next level, working on getting his first 4-1 finish or better here in a singles event. Having come into this round with a 4-0 record, Oscar is going to deliver on that hope for himself here, regardless of the outcome of this game. But at the same time, also with eye on the prize, hoping for that juicy 5-0. Sean, on the other hand, repeat tournament performer, has a couple 4-1 or better finishes here, has been to a lot of events, but never being able to clinch that 5-0, never pulling a best overall finish, always within striking distance, incredibly close, but never actually clinching that award. Sean was always one of the contenders in previous Golden Sprue events for that award, coming incredibly close each time. As I mentioned at the start of this event, the winner of the previous 2 Golden Sprue events was myself, and the drama of this weekend has been wondering who will do it, and seeing both of these players at this table with undefeated records is an incredible privilege, knowing how hard both of them have worked, how hard we've all practiced together, and seeing how much they've grown in recent weeks with their lists over time as players as well. So incredibly excited to cast this game. We are playing on the Lines of Communication battle plan, which we will talk a little bit about shortly. Both players running through some reminders on each of their lists. A couple other little funny dynamics going on here. Oscar staying at Sean's place over the course of the event as well. So these two actually played a game together on Friday night. I won't spoil the results of that game as to not jinx anything, and of course things can always be different here. That being said, I've been joking with both of them in previous round interviews that one of them is going to leave here with a sourpuss on their face. That being said, both of these two incredibly close. Both will be incredibly happy for the other. I expect this to be an incredibly tight game, but also... Oh, Sean is nodding no, saying he will not be happy for Oscar, and then of course a big cheesy smile across his face. Of course, Sean hoping to bring home a big win when he comes home to his daughter Ellie, who he has been taunting Oscar, saying, "You're going to send me home sad to my daughter." But with that, jumping into the list here, I'm going to start off with Sean's Auric War Clans here. So in terms of what's going on the table right now, they have rolled off. Oscar set the table, taking Defender, Oscar being 8 drops, Sean being 3, having a battle regiment in the Antorian Acolytes Battalion. We'll talk a little bit about more about those soon. But Sean is going to have the choice as to who takes the first turn, which will be certainly interesting to see how each player deploys. As I mentioned in the last round, Sean on stream playing against Slave to Darkness. He's playing Auric War Clans, but the Big Wa army type. Super exciting to see this army on table. It's definitely been a common contender throughout this General's Handbook. It has a very stable battle tactic path, very efficient combat units, a good size footprint on the table for contesting objectives. With that, We've seen Sean leverage all of these game pieces incredibly well in the last round and throughout the tournament as well. Big Wa is a conglomerate force that allows Sean to pull unit selection choices from all of the orc books. So he can take units from Kruleboyz, which are the sneaky orcs, Iron Jaws, the ironclad, muscly, aggressive orcs, and the savage orcs, which are the bone splitters. That being said, Sean has only brought a single Kruleboyz and Bone Splitters unit, leaning heavily on the forces of the Iron Jaws to compose his army. So with that, jumping into the list, Sean's army is headed by the Weird Knob Shaman. It is an Iron Jaws general. It is a single cast wizard that is taking the Great Big Green Hand of Gork. We didn't get to see it come out last game due to the early death of the Weird Knob Shaman by the Varen Guard, but this game we might see it used to great effect. The Great Big Green Hand of Gork being a spell that will allow Sean to take one of his orc units and teleport it anywhere on the board outside of 9 inches of the opponent. We'll get into why this is so crucial later when we talk about some of his allegiance abilities. In addition to that, the general carrying the Shaman of the Chilled Lands command trait. This is going to allow him to access the lore of Primal Frost, which is going to give him access to Hoarfrost. We saw Hoarfrost come out on some of Sean's units last game, allowing him to amp up his rends and dive into the game or into combat engagements with a meaningful amount of Ren. Normally he is maxing at Ren 2, so we will see how he ends up utilizing this here, but this may allow him to get through some of Oscar's more dense armor saves, Oscar playing a very tanky army, which we'll talk about shortly. In addition to that, it also provides the threat of Merciless Blizzard, which is an incredible spell that has really changed the way we navigate our way through this GHB. It is 4d6 mortal wounds. If it goes off, it is an absolute machine gun of a spell that we will see here, and we'll talk about why Oscar's army may be susceptible to it, more so than is typical for the OCR Bone Reapers shortly as well. Moving on from there, we have the Wargog Prophet. We saw this used to great effect last game. This is a slot machine of a model. Sean gambling on this last game to peel away half of his opponent's chosen unit. But with that, the Wargog Prophet will give Sean a freebie roll on a 3+. He is able to do D3 mortal wounds to a target within 12 inches of the Wargog Prophet. So beyond that, he's going to begin playing slots. If he rolls a 3 or better, he'll be able to do D3 mortal wounds, or on a roll of a 1 or 2, he is going to deal D6 mortal wounds to himself. Sounds like a risky play, but Sean's able to stack the deck. One of the abilities of Bone Splitter's models that they carry over from their own book is a 6-up ward. So with that, the Glowing Tattoos artifact on the Wargog Prophet is going to enhance that to a 4+ ward, making Sean's back cracks from his own Wargog Prophet far more reliable to avoid. Moving on from there, those two models are going to make up Sean's Antorian Acolytes Battalion, which is going to allow him to roll a 3-up each turn. On a successful roll of a 3+, he'll be able to generate an additional Primal Die. Primal Die being a mechanic where both players are able to roll a 4-up at the start of the turn, and if either of them rolls a 4-up for each that is rolled, they will receive a Primal Die that can be used to modify their casting and their dispels as well, and their unbind. So this is going to be a key interaction piece between both players, and Sean has a battalion that will allow him access to additional die. That being said, Sean also carrying some other foot heroes here, War Chancers, 2 of them, one with the Fixing Beat, which is a D3 healing on a 3-up, and the Get 'em Beat, which is a 3+ for a 3d6 charge, being able to charge within 18 inches instead of the usual 12. A very powerful piece for extending Sean's movement. Some of the foot orcs moving 4 inches, being able to double move for reasons we'll talk about soon, but then being able to 3d6 charge in the charge phase, allowing Sean's army to be way quicker than it appears at first glance. Lastly, Sean is bringing Gobsprak, who is a wizard mounted atop a giant bird, who is an anti-magic piece, once per game being able to roll 3d6 on an unbind to try to deal mortal wounds to an opponent. Gobsprak doing d6 mortals to any wizard whose spell he unbinds on a roll of 10 or higher. Sean will be able to enhance that with one of his allegiance abilities, the Primal Dice, as well as that once per game 3d6 cast. We've seen Gobsprak prove throughout the tournament for Sean to be an important controlling piece. We saw Gobsprak on the table round 1 with our Kruleboyz player playing against Dan Riker's Lumineth Realm Lords. Excited to see Gobsprak back on the table, once again applying pressure to Oscar's casters on the other side of the table. With that being said, Gobsprak knows the entire Krulboy spell lore, giving him access to spells to turn off Oscar's wards. He is able to take a hero phase move. He's able to cast the Black Pit to do mortal wounds at a distance. There is a number of great utility spells that Gobsprak is able to bring out here, and Oscar will have to watch out for all of those. Moving into Sean's infantry, we have 2 bricks of 10 Ardboys armed with Ardboy Chappas. These are sturdy melee units that Sean is going to employ as screens, but simultaneously the Ardboy Chappas enable them to gain a +1 attacks characteristic on the charge. So Sean will get in there, deal some damage. We saw last round he was able to Hoarfrost and damage buff these units. These were a key target for the War Chanters, who have a once per turn, wholly within 15 inches ability that they can target a unit and give them +1 to their melee damage. So Sean was able to leverage that to great effect with the Ardboys last game, peeling away several of the Varangard. That being said, Sean is also bringing 10 Orc Brutes, high-rend unit, good damage output, 30 wounds on 10 models, 4-up save. These are going to be a key hammer for Sean throughout the game as well. Moving on from there, Sean has 2 additional units, the Brute Ragers and the Gore Gruntas, which I'll talk about simultaneously. These are both mobile hammers for Sean, the Gore Gruntas being less of an independent piece, relying upon the damage buff from the War Chanters to arrive at 2 damage a pop, diving into a unit, dealing some mortals on 2 ups per model that makes contact, or rather is within an inch of the charged target after a charge, but then being able to deal oodles of damage in the combat phase. On the other hand, we have the Brute Ragers, which have a base damage characteristic of 2 and are more of an independent operator unit. They have run and charge, so although they move 4 inches at base and are not quite as fast as the Gore Gruntas, who move 9, they are also incredibly quick as well. That being said, I do want to talk a little bit about the Big Wa Allegiance. This is going to afford Sean a series of stackable buffs throughout the game. This is going to give him each turn a number of Wa points if he fulfills various conditions. Some of those, rather an exhaustive list of those being D6 Wa points in his hero phase, 2 for having a single War Chanter at least on the board, 1 for having a Bone Splitter's Wizard, 1 for each successful charge he makes with his units, and then, of course, 1 for each Orc unit that he has engaged with his opponent's models at the end of the combat phase. Lastly, Sean has a heroic action. It's called Here We Go, Here We Go, Here We Go, and he is going to use that to generate additional Wa points. He rolls against the battle round, and if he is able to beat the battle round, he will gain Wa points equal to the number of the battle round. So we'll see how things transpire here, but Sean looking to build up his Wa points as fast as possible so he can generate some of these stackable buffs, generating a +1 to run, a +1 to charge, a +1 to cast Unbind Dispel, followed by a +1 to hit, wound, and then ultimately the Wa, which is an army-wide bonus that'll give Sean +1 to the attacks characteristic of his models army-wide. And notably, while he is doing this, although he will lose all his Wa points afterwards, he will retain his buffs through the Wa. Sean also able to activate the Wa during either player's combat phase, so he can use it as a defensive tech as well. It's hyper flexible. Now, with that, before we get into some of the battle tactics and secondaries and some of the more on-table strategies that Sean will be utilizing here, I do want to talk a little bit about Oscar's list. We saw this in round 2, playing against the Slaves to Darkness Kabbalist list piloted by Ray Squires, and we saw Oscar utilizing his sub-faction, Mortis Praetorians, to great effect. Essentially, the Osiarch Bone Reapers are a skeleton Spartan army that is incredibly tanky and punchy in melee. They have lots of defensive buffs. Their key gimmick being that they are able to generate lots of command points. Oscar, because he has 7 units, will be able to generate, if I recall correctly, 7 extra command points, or 5, one or the other there, but he will have ample command points to utilize throughout the game here. With that, he also has the sub-faction Mortis Praetorians, which is a counter-charge sub-faction. Basically, whenever a unit charges in the charge phase into one of his units, he is able to counter-charge with a unit that is within 12 inches of his opponent's unit that made the charge successfully. Using this in that round earlier on, Oscar was able to fly his Morghast Archai over his screens into Ray's Varangard, applying a first bonus to the Archai because they rolled higher than an 8 on the charge, and then allowing them to piecemeal the Varangard before they got to activate. reducing a lot of damage. It's a very powerful tool, being able to multi-engage units. It's very strong. The fight verse is particularly strong in this matchup, where although Sean does have some tankier units, many of the orcs have 4-up saves that are relatively soft against the higher end of the archive. So we'll have to see how Oscar employs his countercharge ability throughout this game. That being said, moving into some of his units, Oscar is packing 2 bowling balls. He has Arc in the Black. He is a 3-cast wizard with, at top bracket, a +2 to cast Unbind and Dispel. Very exciting to see what Oscar is going to be packing in terms of his cast. Arkin knows the entire spell lore. One notable spell that I want to call out is Drain Vitality, which is a -1 to hit save on a casting value of 5. It is normally an 18-inch spell, but actually Arkin has the ability to extend the range of Oscar's spells from his spell lore by 6 inches. So many of these spells that would normally be 18 inches are actually going to stretch 24 inches out across the board. That being said, I do want to talk about the other bowling ball, which is Catacross. Catacross, a 500-point hero, an incredible support piece. 20 wounds, 3-up save, very tanky. And this man has a book for a war scroll. He is an incredible support piece. He can lay a -1 to hit anywhere on the battlefield at the start of Oscar's hero phase. He has a command that he can issue, applying a +1 to hit and save. It is a pulse. It's got a range of 24 inches around Catacross, who is on a substantially sized base as well. With that, he also fights on bottom bracket whenever he is within 3 inches of the hero. This is very strong. Oscar does not need to target the hero with those attacks if another unit is within range. And of course, on top of that, there's also a 5+ command point steal when Sean receives his start of round command points on Catacross as well. Going to be definitely difficult to navigate. The Orc army is a command point hungry army, so hitting those 5-ups definitely key to whittling away at Sean's resources. I mentioned the Antorian Acolytes battalion before. Oscar is packing 2 of the Antorian Acolytes. These are small foot wizards, and Oscar will have access to that additional primal die through this battalion on a 3-up as well. The first of Oscar's Acolytes is the Mortison Bone Shaper, who has a War Scroll spell that on a casting value of 5 within 18 inches, he is going to be able to roll dice equal to the size of the unit he is targeting, and on every 5-up is going to be mortals. Definitely a solid damage spell into some of Sean's more substantial units. Notably, many of Sean's units do not have ward saves. So we'll see how things pan out there. We did see Sean use a similar spell, the Black Pit, into the Chaos Warriors last game, so there may be some karma afoot for that huge 18 mortal wound infliction to the Chaos Warriors, obviously some of which is warded, but Sean allocated ample damage, so maybe things will work back the other way here. That being said, the Mortison Bone Shaper is the general. It is carrying the Aura of Sterility, which is not really going to matter in this matchup because Sean does not have any shooting, but ordinarily would apply a -1 to hit and wound for missile weapons, targeting units wholly within 12 inches of the general. The Mortison Bone Shaper also packing the Empower Naderite weapons spell. This is a very important support spell that is going to make Oscar's Naderite weapons, which many of his models are carrying, explode on 5+ rolls instead of 6+, which means on a roll of 5+, a single hit roll will score 2 hits for Oscar. Incredibly valuable. It's going to multiply his damage output. Getting off this spell will be crucial for Oscar to piece through some of the meatier and higher wound density units on Sean's side of the board. With that, I want to move on to the other Acolyte, which is the Mortison Ossifector, not to be underrated here. The War Scroll spell is a casting value of 5 with a 24-inch range, wholly within, but he will be able to add a +1 rend buff to a unit or allow them to ignore the first wound or mortal wound allocated to a unit in a phase. This is a buff that we often see going down in the Morghast Archive. So we'll see how things pan out with that. But of course, the Ossifector also carrying Merciless Blizzard. We talked a little bit about that during Sean's list, but an incredibly powerful spell that can deal 4d6 mortal wounds directly to a unit within the 12-inch range. Notably, Merciless Blizzard has been FAQ'd so that you cannot set up a unit and then Merciless Blizzard. One thing that I do want to harken back to is Sean does have a teleport in his army. We'll come back to that in a moment to talk about the Mighty Destroyer's command. But he will not be able to teleport and then cast the Merciless Blizzard. So with that in mind, Sean's wizard is the teleporting wizard is the general that also has a Merciless Blizzard. It is a 1-cast wizard, so unless he gives it a extra cast, using some of the GHB rules, he will not be also casting Merciless Blizzard with it anyway. So moot point for a few reasons there, but just want to call that out in case people think, well, why doesn't he throw the shotgun into Oscar's backline here, throw a blizzard out there. Also, that would be reckless endangerment for his general, so we do not advise that here on stream presently. With that, I do want to talk about the Cavalos Death Riders. This is a 190-point cavalry unit that Oscar used to great effect earlier on to give his somewhat slow army a little extra reach on the table. They also can do some mortal wounds on the charge. They're not particularly sticky, but they do have enough wound density to withstand some hits. So we will see how they play for Oscar here. They are important objective grabbers. Sometimes they help with surround and destroy. So we'll see how things pan out there. Oscar also packing a pair of Immortus Guard. These are incredibly powerful units, 5 wounds on a 3+ save. They have a command that allows them to fight twice in the combat phase, although they are fighting last a second time. We do see a handshake coming out from the player, so they are starting off here. So we will get some table updates in a few moments, but with that, I do want to continue talking about these Immortus Guard. One integral bit is that they have a 2-up mandatory pass-off from any Bone Reaper's hero. This is not just a foot hero, so Oscar can leverage these to protect Archon, to protect Catacross. It is a mandatory pass-off, so if damage is dumped into these models, it will have to go to the Morghast, or into the Immortus Guard, rather. So we will talk a little bit more about the Immortus Guard, how they stand back up, why passing off the damage can be really good for the OCR Bone Reapers, and how he is able to recur those models. Lastly, I want to talk about these Morghasts. We talked about them a little bit, but they are an incredibly potent unit that Oscar has been able to leverage with the Mortis Praetorian sub-faction ability, allowing him to countercharge over his screens, get within range, lay the heat down on an 8+. They fight first. They also have a 5-up ward if they are wholly within 12 inches of one of Oscar's OBR heroes. This unit is incredibly powerful, incredibly punchy. They also turn off commands while you are within 3 inches of them. Oscar has used this to great effect, stopping his opponents from benefiting from all-out defense, so we will see how they are leveraged in this matchup. As I mentioned, commands pretty integral to some of the combat pieces that Sean is packing early on until the Big Wob buffs go up. Also, all-out attack plus the Big Wob bonus being able to give Sean a collective +1 to hit if the -1 to hit is applied by Catacross on a unit. So not being able to grab that is going to be difficult. It's going to limit some of the efficiency of Sean's units here. I do also want to talk about the Bone Tide next. This is a terrain piece that Oscar has deployed in the upper left corner of the board, likely hoping to screen out one of the potential teleport options for Sean. We'll see how some of the debuffs come out from this as well, but Oscar able to roll a single die to lay down some debuffs, one of which could be a -3 to charge. He can also do a -1 to cast and pray. There's a lot of value packed into this terrain piece. Sean notably not including a monster in his list to remove this from the board, so if he is fighting in that region of the board, if he's within 18 inches of the terrain piece, he's going to have to contend with those debuffs. So with that, I do want to come back to the Big Wa list really quickly. Obviously, each of the Big Wa orcs stem from, or many of them stem from different sub-factions, and so they are borrowing allegiance abilities from their respective books. The Bone Splitters models retaining their 6-up ward from the Bone Splitters book. On the other hand, you have the Cruel Boys who retain the Venom, which is 6s do mortal wounds equal to the damage characteristic of the weapon that has Venom on it. And that's not going to be incredibly relevant here. I mean, Oscar, or rather Gobsprak, can do some damage to Oscar with the Venom, but we often see that in Cruel Boys lists employed on the Gut Rippers and the Bolt Boys to great effect. You can enhance it in Cruel Boys. Sean not bringing the Cruel Boys Shaman to enhance the mortal wounds. Gobsprak also not an incredibly punchy combat piece. He can do some damage, but he can be a little swingy, so we'll see if this does come back into the fray here. And that being said, there is also the most integral of these battle traits that he is borrowing, which is going to be the Mighty Destroyer's ability from the Ironjawz sub-faction. This is a very unique command that goes off in the hero phase that gives Sean 3 options. The unit receiving the command, if it is within 3 inches of Oscar's units, it must pile in. If it is within 12 inches, it must charge. And if it is outside of 12 inches, it may make a normal move. So we will see how that is employed by Sean here, but it is a great way to extend the movement of his pieces on the board here, making the Gore-Gruntas move 18 inches plus charge in a turn, extending the foot orc range to 8 inches since they move 4 inches base. Very, very powerful movement tech here. That being said, one little piece I do want to talk about is the Big Green Hand of Gork. Sean able to utilize this teleport spell alongside Mighty Destroyers to teleport one of his game pieces, and Mighty Destroyers it from outside of 12 inches into that range, then make a charge from within that range without his opponent being able to redeploy because the movement was done in the hero phase. Incredibly powerful movement tech. We've seen that come out in a fair few of Sean's games off stream earlier in the weekend. Maybe we'll see it come out here as well. A couple things I want to throw out there as well is just the grand strategies. Sean is bringing Wa to the table, which means he will have to have his general or a battle line unit in his opponent's territory at the end of the game. On the other hand, Oscar is bringing the Overshadow grand strategy, which requires him to eliminate all of Sean's battle line while also keeping his battle line, which is going to include his horses, the Archai, and the Immortus Guard, alive at game end. Sean has a substantial few battle line units and good wound density concentrated in these battle line units. He has 2 bricks of 10 Ardboys, which is a combined 20 wounds a pop, as well as 30 wounds concentrated in a brick of Orc Brutes. So see how things pan out on the Grand Strat front there, but maybe slight edge to Sean on that front in terms of flexibility of Grand Strat. That being said, I do want to talk about secondaries too. Both of these armies having an array of secondaries available to them. I really want to highlight the Orc secondary path because it is almost to the point where you can score somewhere between 3 and 5 battle tactics without much interaction from your opponent. We saw last game that despite going down the primary early, Sean was able to choke his opponent out on battle tactics by killing his units while always being able to score a battle tactic. Eventually being able to work his way across the table, deny his opponent's grand strat, get the job done. That being said, we will see how things pan out. Sean has battle tactics for keeping his 1 Boys model within 3 inches of a terrain piece. It's not locked to the general. He has a tactic for being within 3 inches of the center of the board with 2 Iron Jaws units. Having 30 WA points, an incredibly easy feat to achieve in this list, and also scoreable when he has no models on the board. There are a lot of incredibly powerful battle tactics available to the Big WA forces here. That being said, we are off to the races. I am going to take a peek at the game state here. Oscar has been given first by Sean, so we're going to just take a peek at the battle tactic that was called, get a good idea of where things are at, and we will come back to some more updates on the action in just a moment. All right, we are diving back into the action here. Oscar has been given the first turn by Sean, and he has gone with the Magical Dominance battle tactic. We're moving on to the movement phase here, but Oscar achieving the tactic already, advancing onto the objectives, and going to score a clean 5 on turn 1. He is just rounding out his turn here with some of his movement and positioning. Oscar taking a very minimal approach to his movement this turn, flaring out his units slightly, but not advancing too far onto the objectives, offering Sean opportunities to step onto the objectives and take them back. I do need to remind everyone in the audience that this is an incredibly close pair of players. They are rooming together this weekend, or rather Oscar is staying at Sean's place. These are 2 clubmates of mine. They have practiced together. They have learned together. Hell, I helped both of these 2 look at their list prior to the event. get in reps, both working incredibly hard on both the hobby front, on the tournament front. Really, really aspiring to great heights here. Very proud of both of them, representing our club well. Both coming into this round with 4-0 records. I cannot state that enough, just how incredible that is. They both came in here with game plans. They have executed. They have both played incredibly well. Appears Oscar has failed the command point steal with Catacross. Oh, he succeeded on it? Okay. I lied. It appears Oscar has succeeded. I thought I saw a 3, but that is a 5. This is going to slightly kneecap Sean's command points this turn. He's on 3 CP going into this round. Sean not yet calling battle tactic, mulling over the board state. We see Sean deploying centerboard, Oscar deploying a little bit left of center, advancing slowly onto those objectives. Oscar really playing carefully here. Definitely wary of some of the output of the orcs. Of course, Sean deploying a little wide here centerboard, looking to play the priority, looking to find opportunities to take advantage of Oscar's castle wherever possible. We will see how things pan out. For those of you who are just joining us now, my name is Tyler Bushy. I have been the voice of the Golden Sprue GT this weekend. This is our final round of event coverage. Thank you all for tuning in and supporting the DaBoyz stream. To give a little background on the event, this is an event that has been running for several years in the capital region of New York State. This is an event that uses a combined scoring system, including hobby, sportsmanship, and tournament scores. Whichever of these 5-0 players advances will probably be a likely candidate for best overall if their hobby scores are strong. I suspect they both are. Sportsmanship scores are strong. Same thing, both a charm to play against as well as tournament score. So the combined aggregate of those 3, we'll see how things pan out for both of them. But this very well could be the game for all the marbles. I would be absolutely delighted to see either of these two advance with a 5-0 record. I know they would both be delighted to see their opponent with a 5-0 record. Both of them chasing that first 5-0, putting in tons of hours of work. Can't help but be happy for the both of them. Super excited to see this matchup. I mentioned previously, but Sean effectively taught me how to play Age of Sigmar years ago. In the lead up to my first GT, which was Golden Sprue 2 years ago, I played 30 games in a month to practice, and almost all of them were against Sean. I must have played him every single night, and I was all the better for it, and I don't think I would have won the Golden Sprue GT these past 2 years without him. Oscar has been a consistent practice partner of mine in the past year as well, has helped me work out a lot of different lists and ideas and concepts. Incredibly talented player. We met Oscar actually at Golden Sprue last year, and he linked up with our club as well. We've played a lot of games together. We've had a lot of great memories amongst us. So having these two friends on top table really is an excellent sight to behold. Their practice has paid off. They have helped each other along the way with advice and tech. Both awesome people. Miles in the chat shouting them both out, both amazing humans. Sean has called Sneak Up as his battle tactic. That is the Cruel Boys tactic that was added in one of the previous battle scrolls, giving them the ability to score a tactic and 2 victory points if all Cruel Boys models on the table are within 3 inches of a terrain piece. In this case, that only applies to Gobsprak, the Cruel Boys Wizard on Bird. Sean beginning to work through hero phase. Oscar taking a heroic action, nailing a CP here on Catacross. Sean with 5 casts to work out here. 6 potentially if he chose the extra cast for having a Locust in the second turn, which is likely. We have our head judge, Madigan Mason, at tableside, eyeing these players, making sure everything is called straight down the middle, catch any rules mistakes. Both of these players very experienced, but of course, accidents do happen, mistakes are made. So making sure that we are providing the cleanest game possible on all fronts. But I do expect nothing from love, positivity, and courtesy from both of these players at the table, making sure they're doing everything correct.
Oh, I see it. Wait. I don't see it. Reshare it. Wait a second, wait.
Sean rolling a 7 to cast.
I got it.
Not quite certain which spell this is here, but it is coming off of the Wargog, or so it appears. Now the Wargog is carrying Hoarfrost, which is probably the likeliest candidate for what the spell is. He is throwing a Primal at it. Looks like he has nailed a 4, bringing the total casting value to an 11, which will get that off. Looks like Arkin may be in reach. Oscar deciding how he wants to use these unbinds. Of course, Arkin rather is an incredibly powerful wizard with a +2 to cast unbind and dispel on the top bracket. So the combination of the +2 plus the value of the primal dice here may allow Oscar to disable some of Sean's magic early. As I did mention before, the Bigwa faction does have access to a +1 to cast a spell and unbind army-wide once Sean is able to increase his WA points. I believe that triggers at the 12 WA point mark, which is attainable turn 1, but a few things, of course, need to go right. We'll check in on Sean's WA points shortly. See where he's at in terms of buffs. Hoarfrost incredibly valuable in this matchup. Most of Oscar's models packing incredibly tanky saves. Solid wound density on a model-to-model basis, although he does not have a ton of units. I think Gobsprack has failed his initial cast. Snake Eyes roll, miscasting. Taking 3 damage from the sounds of it from the table. Not an ideal opening for Sean, but of course Gobsprack always more potent as a anti-magic tech piece, although it would have been fantastic to see Sean throw out a choking miss potentially here, limiting the attack potential of Oscar's OBR models. -1 to attacks, of course, negating some of Oscar's sources of +1 to attacks potentially. So not the miscast we want to see this early on, but still plenty of Warhammer to be played. That being said, as the finals rolls onto, we do have a number of other excellent games occurring in the tournament hall, so I do want to give a shout out to a few of those matchups. Because of the scoring system that is used at DaBoyz events, a 4-1 player could reach over the finish line and finish with a best overall finish, even though not best general. That being said, a couple other games going on right now at table 2. We have Ross McCune and Hunter Armstrong, both players 3-1. Hunter, we gave a shout out earlier on in the weekend, playing the Stonehorn and Thunder Tusk 6 monster truck list. Incredibly valuable, using vultures on the different monsters to throw mortal wounds at units from beyond. Playing against Ross, good pal of his, also friend-on-friend game, some friendly fire going on here. Ross is playing the OCR Bone Reapers, also playing Mortis Praetorians, but running 8 Morghasts. A little further down, we had Alan Knowles on stream last game. He is playing against Zachary McComb, also playing Big Wa, although I'm sure Alan is substantially familiar with Big Wa after his last round stream game. Probably a little more wary of the power of the Wargog Shaman, which we saw violate a handful of the Chosen, but incredibly well played from Alan. I anticipate that being a very close game. Moving down the line, we also have Dan Lynch and Logan Vanderwalker Both of them are 3-1, I believe. Presently, Dan Lynch winning against Marcella last round. So moving on with 3-1. Also piloting a similar list of Hunter with 6 monster trucks, 2 of which being Thunder Tusks and 4 Stone Horns. Or rather, I believe 3 Stone Horns and 3 Thunder Tusks is the exact ratio. Let's take a peek at that list, actually. Nope, exactly as I called it. 4 Stone Horns, 1 being a Husker, 3 Beast Riders, and 2 Thunder Tusks, 1 being a Husker on Thunder Tusks. So 4 Stone Horns, 2 Thunder Tusks. Moving down the line, we also have Ogres versus Seraphon this round. Down the line, we have Giants versus Marcella's Gitz, which is against Brian Kissel, the Ogres player that I mentioned being Mike Mullis, and the Seraphon player being Jeremy Williams. Ray Squires was on stream earlier in the weekend. He is against Jason Rim, who's playing Fire Slayers in the 2-2 bracket, and a handful of other games downrange as well, but just some of our notables there. We'll dive into some of the other results as they come in as well. That being said, we are into Sean's movement phase now. We see him advancing upboard and right now moving on to that rightmost objective first. I imagine we're going to see a little bit of dancing around one another early on here as both players jockey into position and try to play the priority. Priority being super integral here for Sean, wanting to pull Oscar's forces into his line so he can use the combination of Merciless Blizzard and the Wergog to stare off substantial portions of Oscar's army. That being said, we will see how things pan out. There's plenty of dice to be rolled here for the priorities, so hopefully each of their dreams come true. I know that can't be the case, but they are both hoping, playing this conservatively. We see each of these 2 bricks of Ardboys advancing on the center objective and the rightmost objective. One thing I do want to talk about is the OCR Bone Reapers have been terrorizing events with the Null Myriad sub-faction. This has been an ongoing thing for the duration of the General's Handbook. Tom Guan popularizing the 8 Morghast Null Myriad list, which has been a force to be reckoned with at several events. So the Null Myriad sub-faction, while your units are wholly within 9 inches of a hero on the 2+, you can ignore spells that are interacting with your game pieces. That being said, Oscar is playing Mortis Praetorians of the Charged sub-faction here, so he is more susceptible than some of the other OCR Bone Reaper lists to that Blizzard. Then again, Oscar does have Recursion, and the Mortis Praetorian sub-faction is incredibly powerful, so we'll see how he employs it here. Brutes advancing up the right side behind the Ardboys. Uniquely, we also see the Razor centerboard. In other games, Sean has been utilizing them as a piece to run along the side of the board and set up, surround, and destroy, but in this case, potentially using them as a screen for the Gore Gruntas, which are very valuable in this matchup and can do a lot of damage. Sean advancing his heroes up as well, keeping the castle together. Interestingly, he is offering a large surface area here, almost asking Oscar, please come into my forces. And likewise, Oscar setting up this castle, countercharge units in place, really waiting for Sean to have to take the opportunity to walk in, playing a big game of Warhammer Chicken on the table right now, banking on that prio. Of course, Sean going second in the round. So he will not be favored on the priority. Oscar will break ties. Sean mulling over some of his movement here. Definitely early on yet. Sean obviously in a great position to score his battle tactic here, as long as he does not fumble the ball here and move Gobsprak from his current location without placing him near another terrain piece. I don't anticipate that from him, so we will likely see Sean scoring 5 as well, capturing the center and center right objectives. But very early still yet. all game pieces on the board. As I said, both players waiting for an opportunity to pull the other into engagement. And in that battle, the odds do favor Sean, if not only because the secondary game of the Orcs is incredibly strong. Places a clock on Oscar, whose secondaries are strong but not quite as powerful to get in there, interact, create some meaningful advantage on the table. That being said, we're talking a lot about some of these battle tactics. I mentioned them earlier, but I want to come back to some of these. This turn, Sean has called the Sneak Up battle tactic, which simply requires that he keeps all his Cruel Boys units within 6 inches, or 3 inches rather, of a terrain piece. Incredibly easy to accomplish, and actually already accomplishing it on the board from just his deployment. That being said, Sean has relatively easy access to several of the General's Handbook battle tactics. So we'll probably see the typical magical dominance, intimidate the invaders, maybe a surround and destroy, let into the maelstrom. All of these not particularly difficult for the Orcs to accomplish. There are also some big WA battle tactics, one of which is Wait For It, Lads, which requires Sean to have at least 24 WA points when he calls it, but complete the battle tactic by having 30 at the end of that turn. Basically saying, hold off on wawing to all of his forces, not using that advantage yet. Interestingly, this battle tactic is also able to be scored while tabled. On top of that, Sean also has access to the Squish the Puny Gits Iron Jaws battle tactic because his general is an Iron Jaws model, being the Weird Knob Shaman. This is going to allow Sean to call an enemy battle unit, or rather, if there is at least one enemy battle line unit on the battlefield, he can call this battle tactic, and if he takes out all of Oscar's battle line, he accomplishes it. That would be a big swing of a battle tactic because Oscar's grand strategy, as we know, is also keeping all of his battle line alive. So, I believe we are back to priority here. Oscar has the call of the priority. Proceeding on to talking about some of these secondaries, I mean, Sean can also call That's Our Turf now, which just requires him to have 2 Iron Jaws within 3 inches of the center of the board. There's also a Orc battle tactic. We're having all of his models within 12 inches of the enemy at the end of the turn, time to get stuck in. I think I improperly stated that this was an Iron Jaws battle tactic, but it is a generic Orc tactic that is quite good when you get into combat. Oscar appears to have given the turn away at a glance. That being said, I do also want to talk about some of Oscar's secondaries. We're talking about the power of these Orc secondaries, but Oscar has plenty in the tank as well that are very valuable, a bit more interactive as a baseline, but incredibly powerful nevertheless. Some of which, based on Oscar's list construction, are not attainable. Obviously, he's unable to accomplish the Gulfazar Harvester battle tactic or the Necropolis Stalker's battle tactic, but he is also able to do the Sculptor's Entourage, which requires his Immortus Guard and Immortison to contest the same objective wholly outside of his territory. In this case, I believe that will not matter because I believe the territories run up to the half mark. I will double check that on the battle plan now. To remind myself, we'll talk about the battle plan in a moment here. It is lines of communication. That being said, Oscar is also able to do the Trample the Defiant battle tactic with the Cavalos Death Riders unit. We shouted out the horses before, but the horses are able to make a charge move, and if they are able to stay within 3 inches of any enemies at the end of the turn, Oscar will score that battle tactic. Charging into a soft, non-punchy unit, although Sean does have few of those, will allow Oscar to easily score this tactic with the horses.
Our turf.
Sean is calling That's Our Turf. That is to have 2 Iron Jaws units within 3 inches of the center of the board. So we'll see how things pan out for him.
This is going to be the 12. When did you decide on your -1 visit? It stays until the okay.
The territories actually only run up to the 11-inch mark, so it will be far easier for Oscar to score Sculptor's Entourage. He'll be able to score that on any of these objectives this game, which is incredibly powerful. Talking a little bit more about the battle plan, we've talked a lot about how these are both combat armies. It's all about efficiency, stacking buffs, different ways of course, but each of these armies trying to make their units more efficient than their opponents, crack open their opponent's castle and deal a critical blow. That being said, this is a battle plan that will allow these players, when going second, to disrupt that phase. In this case, the disruption after the battle round, the player taking the first turn is not going to have any choices. The player taking the second turn is going to be able to call a phase, and when the opponent's army issues a command in that phase on a 3-up, they must spend an additional command point. Now for Oscar, giving the turn away here, this is incredibly valuable because it synergizes with Katakros' command point theft. He's eating into the command points that Sean has available to him. Obviously, Orcs being a command point hungry army, we talked about the power of the Mighty Destroyer's command, but also the efficiency that Sean appreciates from all-out attack and all-out defense in the combat phase. So we'll have to see how Sean prioritizes his command points. Underrated aspect here is that Oscar's units do not take battle shock. So Sean often holding a CP in the back, trying to go ahead, protect his units, but in this case, he is going to be harder pressed to do so. Sean also 2,000 points. He does not have a triumph to spend here. There will be no Indomitable to avoid battle shock without utilizing a command. Oscar has the Inspired Triumph, which will give him a once per game +1/2 rule. Sean mulling over some of his spells. He does realize that he has to walk forward. Probably continue shifting his castle over, shifting those Ardboys up so they are touching the 3-inch ring on that center objective, scoring the battle tactic, and bracing for the potential impact of an OCR Bone Reaper's turn, maybe a double turn. Oscar on the back end of the round. Oscar coming in is going to mean that he's going to have to try to crack this castle. He will have to be wary of the Wargog Prophet. Jump into the game really quick just to catch a rules issue. Players confirming they are all set. It appeared that they may have been mismeasuring for the War Chanter, measuring 12 inches, but they were actually measuring for the Wargog Prophet to determine if Sean was within spell range with his pigs, likely to throw a Mystic Shield down, maybe even a Hoarfrost. The Wargog carrying Hoarfrost as well also has a ranged Mortal Wound spell. Moving through the casting phase here, Oscar leveraging the defensive power of Arkin, trying to mitigate some of Sean's spells. We'll get some confirmation from the table shortly on what spells are live as we move into this turn and we see Sean finish out his battle tactic. But looking at another 5 for Sean, unless something goes wrong in the movement phase here.
Run 2 on the pigs.
Sean has given the Gorgrunta mount Ren 2 with Hoarfrost, meaning both the top and bottom of this unit is at Ren 2. This means Sean is going to have a bucket of dice to throw at a unit in the combat phase on 2s and 2s. Notably, all of Oscar's key heroes here are either protected by screens or they are within 3 inches of the Immortus guard. We'll see where those Gorgrunths go. For those of you just joining us now, this is the Golden Sprue GT DaBoyz live stream. My name is Tyler Bushy. I have been the voice of the stream this weekend. This is our final round that we are broadcasting. Thank you all for joining us. We have Sean O'Shaughnessy versus Oscar Sebastio. This is going to be an incredible game. Both players looking for their first 5-0 in a singles event. Both players incredibly hungry. 2 clubmates, 2 pals, practice partners. Both great humans, great sports, both impeccable hobbyists. Very excited to see how this one pans out. The stakes are high for both players. And hilariously, both will be leaving the venue together as well, because Oscar is even staying at Sean's this weekend. The 3 of us, all clubmates. I have seen these 2 practice, play, and grow over the course of time. As I mentioned previously, Sean teaching me to play Age of Sigmar when I was new and giving me all the tools I needed to win my first GT, which was Golden Sprue 2 years ago, and also winning Golden Sprue last year as well. But it's the moment for these 2. It's their turn at bat. We will be crowning a new Golden Sprue champion. And it is very possibly either of these 2 players off the back of a 5-0 record with strong marks in both sports and hobby. Could also be someone from the 4-1 bracket with high marks as well. So we'll see how things pan out, but at the very least, whoever's coming away from this is looking at a best general finish if they win at base. Sean making some measurements saying, do I stay, do I go? Sean scrolling through his phone. We can see in one of his background tabs that he has the photo of his daughter chilling on standby to guilt trip Oscar during key parts of the game. He has already hit Oscar with the photo of his daughter, that you are going to send me home to a sad face. How could you do this to me, Oscar? Incredibly dirty play from Sean, but understandable nevertheless. Sean understanding that he has an incredibly cute child, using that to his advantage, knowing Oscar is absolutely a sucker for cuteness. That's why he has chosen the OCR Bone Reapers. Sean's daughter also likely a future Warhammer champion, potentially watching this from home. Will she be watching her father come away with the victory or with the defeat? We do not know. We will find out soon. On the other hand here, Oscar really putting in the hours here. I cannot emphasize enough. I mean, Sean and Oscar are both known to do their research before a game. Very meticulous in terms of asking questions, looking up rules. But I have to give the advantage here on research to Oscar. He has had a game plan for all of these matchups. He has worked incredibly hard. I was talking with Oscar a bit earlier in the event about his game plans and what he intends to do in each of these matchups, and he is executing. He says, this is what I'm going to do, and he goes out there and he does it. He has laid down a plan in the pre-game interview for this matchup. We will see if he delivers on his promises, but he is ready to execute. Sean still proceeding with hero phase here. Sean throwing out cheapy Mortal Wound spell, I believe from the Wargog Prophets. Said Prophets, I should say Prophet. There is only one. Thank God there are not two. With seen the Wargog do incredible amounts of work here. Sean, incredibly excited to play slots with that miniature whenever possible. Oscar defining parallax for Sean.
I think this is straight out because the world is what it is.
I didn't know there was a word for it.
Oscar has also been reading his dictionary on top of his General's Handbook. The word of the weekend is parallax, describing to Sean why it was that he thought maybe some of his miniatures were outside of the range of Choking Mist, but Sean attempting to throw Choking Mist out and lay down a debuff of -1 attacks to all of the OCR Bone Reaper's miniatures in the castle, except the Mortis Infero that is in the upper right corner of the castle. Sean beginning to move here, substantial bit forward. I won't tell you the exact amount due to my concern with the parallax effect, warping my judgment of these measurements. We see the first Ironjaw's unit moving within 3 inches of center board. Sean actually standing a bit over the center mark. Tidying up his miniatures, accounting for any other shenanigans. We're likely to see the castle shift here as well. One underrated thing I want to talk about is just the screening potential for Wa Point generation. Really, heard it called Wa Stacks, a couple other names as well. But effectively, what you do is when you are placing your screens, you place a unit in front, and the unit behind is 3 inches away from the 0.5 inch mark from the front edge of the first unit. What this allows you to do is when your opponent engages that front unit, they have to finish a charge at the 0.5 inch mark. It allows you to be within 3 inches of that unit with 2, thus generating 2 WA points at the end of the combat phase from being engaged. It's a great way to build up your WA points incredibly quickly. We see Sean advancing what appears to be one of the Auric War Chancers, bundling him tightly in there, perhaps within 3 of that front edge, generating a Wa stack, or whatever you wish to call it. Other Ardboy unit tagging the 3 inch line and flaring out, stretching across to the other objective as well. Now, in Age of Sigmar, units can only contest a singular objective at a time, so Sean will have to choose which objective this unit is contesting, but this gives him the added versatility of moving back and forth if he is standing on both. An incredibly powerful strategy that we've seen employed by some of the Gargant players this weekend, being able to put 40 models on one objective and take it, and then have one model straddle 2 objectives, and then when their opponent tries to step on the other, they swap which objective they are contesting, and they now have 20 models on 2 objectives instead of 40 on 1. Give the players a moment here to proceed through this. They're discussing some of the WA point generation. Sean is just advancing his castle up board. I'm going to step away to just get a couple other table updates and just get an idea of what spells are live here going into the bottom of 2. All right, jumping back into the stream here, I have a couple table updates from some of our neighboring tables. So at one of them, we have Dan Lynch playing Logan Vanderwerker. It appears that Dan currently has the edge. They're playing an incredibly violent game that is Slaves to Darkness against the Ogre Maw tribes. Still a lot of monster trucks left on the table. I peeped into Marcella's game, that is the Gloomspite Gits for Sons of Bahamut, and 2 of the Mega Gargants are down. So that is going to be a bit of a slog for the Gargant player. 30 bounders can be very difficult for Giants, although the Battle Shock Scream, monstrous action that they can utilize, is incredibly valuable. Some other tables, Hunter Armstrong has been defeated by Ross McCune, taking out Arkin early, but unfortunately falling to 2 bricks of 4 Morgaths. In addition to that, I also took a peep at the Seraphon and Ogres game, which appears to be pretty even keel right down the middle. I also took the time to chat with both of our players in this game and just get a summary of what is currently employed on the board. Arkin had Mystic Shield, which will now go away going into Oscar's turn here. But the Gore-Gruntas, the actual pigs themselves, that is the unit at the bottom of the center objective, the 6 ovular bases. Those are at -3 currently due to the Hoarfrost spell. And then -1 attacks, of course, to everything in the castle will persist until Sean's next hero phase, debuffing Oscar's melee output. We have a question in the chat from Julius. When do you decide when your models contest objectives each time a player scores? Yes, so basically at the end of each turn after the Battle Shock phase has occurred, you're going to be at end of turn, and then you're going to basically say, like, these friendly units are contesting this objective. You're contesting basically anything you're standing on. If you have a unit that's contesting or standing on 2 objectives, you'll choose one. Turn player, of course, having the priority to make that choice. Usually when interactions are simultaneous, turn player has the choice and will proceed first in doing so. But this is always going to happen at end of turn. In Age of Sigmar, unlike in Warhammer 40k, objectives are sticky, so one thing you can do is you can take an objective at the end of the turn and you can leave that objective, and as long as your opponent's models aren't contesting it at the end of the turn, you'll still hold it. Obviously, this is a map with 3 objectives in the center of the board. This is a scrum in the middle map, so that's not going to be incredibly relevant always here, but it can come up pretty often on some of the larger maps with more objectives. We see Oscar mulling over some options here. Sean did complete his turn, scoring another 5 points, using the put 2 Iron Jaws within 3 inches of the center of the board battle tactic. Oscar has now called Intimidate the Invaders as his battle tactic. This is going to require Oscar to put more units wholly outside his territory than are within, which he has already succeeded based on his board positioning. The territory is only running 11 inches up the board from bottom upward and from top downward. Short side of the board being 44 inches, divided into 4 quadrants, of course, 11 inches, 60 inches wide. So just got to be beyond 11 inches forward for Oscar, and much of his army is already. So this is going to be a nice give-me battle tactic that allows Oscar some breathing room to begin engaging his opponent's forces, play the prio, work out what he wants to do. This may be the turn where we finally see the Ossiarch Bone Reapers come in and try to begin cracking the Orc Castle. Both players deep in thought presently. Sean looks like he is pondering the meaning of life itself at the table right now, reviewing the board state. Both players thinking over every potential permutation of this game. Which is the route to victory? I am not sure myself, and neither are these two. We won't know until the dice are rolled, but we will see what choices they make. For those of you who are just joining us now, you are tuned into the DaBoyz Golden Sprue GT live stream. We are in our final round of coverage. We have Oscar Savastio versus Sean O'Shaughnessy, who we lovingly call Sean.
Savastio, not Sebastian.
Savastio. Both of these players, good friends, club mates, teammates of mine. Both players 4-0 coming into this round, looking to put the heat on, come out of this with a 5-0 finish. We'll see how things pan out for both players. Silver linings for both, of course. Either way this turns out, either player walking away with a 4-1 finish. Both potentially in the running for best overall, still with strong hobby and sportsmanship scores. Of course, scores for both of those players in those regards being high, particularly sports, because both are a charm to play against at the table. Oscar casting the Reinforced Construct spell here, utilizing a primal die to modify the cast. Looks like he has landed a 6, making the 12 cast move up to a 14 with the +2 from Arkin. Arkin is a +2 to cast Unbind and Dispel Wizard at top bracket. Reinforced Constructs is a pretty strong spell from the OCR Bone Reapers that is going to be very valuable for Oscar here. I want to talk about how this plays into Sean's castle. The casting value is 5 base, so easy to attain, but of course Oscar aspiring for a high cast here, so that way it is difficult to unbind. But it has a range of 18 inches, extended 6 inches by Arkin, because it is from the OCR Bone Reaper spell lore. But basically this spell coming down is going to allow Oscar to pick a friendly OCR Bone Reapers unit wholly within range invisible and give them a ward of 4+ against mortal wounds, the same that Sean is packing on his Wargog Prophet. This is really important. We've talked a little bit about how Oscar is not playing Mill Myriad, so he doesn't have the 2-up spell shrug that is common for many of the OCR Bone Reapers lists we've seen this season. Instead, he has a countercharge through the Mortis Praetorian sub-faction. But in addition to that, this is also going to allow him to walk a little more comfortably into range of the Wargog as he begins castle cracking. Players rolling a die under the table, attacking the commentator with dice from afar. That being said, Sean was able to use much of his primal die in reserve to stop the Reinforced Construct spell. Not what you want to see from the OCR Bone Reaper side of the table, but still lots of Warhammer to go, and not a single engagement has been fought quite yet. The only damage on the board has come from a nice turn 1 miscast on Gobsprat. Sean down to 1 primal. Oscar peeping some more scrolls, doing some mid-turn research, making sure he's optimizing his targets and running through everything correctly. Looking forward to seeing how he navigates the melee engagement now that the ball is in his court. Sean placing lots of models on those objectives. Now, at the very least, Oscar will be scoring the battle tactic here. He does hold that leftmost objective, so the question is how much is he able to peel off this center objective and how much of his force remains after the combat phase. Obviously trying to put a fair few bodies on the board while also being cognizant of the Weird Knob Shaman who could cast Blizzard, as well as the Wargong, who could stare models off the board. We might see some slot machines in the following turn after priority, depending on which way that swings. So a couple key bits here, I think from the orc position, you're feeling pretty comfortable, right? You've scored your 2 tactics, you haven't used anything like super pressing resource-wise. You have expended 2 of the give me a battle tactics, but he still has the walk point battle tactic in the tank for effectively a free 2 victory points. You're on the objectives, you have that footprint there, you have tanky screens. The ball is in Oscar's court to respond here. Of course, also there is the inherent risk of casting within range of Gobsprat here as well.
All right. Got it. Hop.
See how things roll on. Oscar beginning to place out his engagement tools. Working out where am I going, how am I engaging. Would not be surprised to see Oscar go for a more killy than scoring-focused turn. It'll be incredibly hard to remove that many bodies from the objective, but maybe trying to get into some of the more meaningful bits of Sean's army. Oscar playing conservative, though, pulling the Immortus card out to the leftmost objective. You see the Morghasts coming in behind the screens here. Let's see what happens. Yes, I did mention the -1 attack spell did go off in the prior turn from Gobsprat, which of course is mitigating some of the potential combat output from the OBR here. Even if they were to receive the +1 attacks bonus, they would only be back to their base profiles, which is of course not what you really want to see when you're adding buffs. You want to be beyond norm. This is a combat matchup. It's going to be a big on efficiency, and debuffs like that have to hurt. Also, of course, limiting the double turn potential here if Oscar were to win the priority, because of course, although he will be able to advance over 2 turns, he's losing output. Simply put, Oscar may be taking a conservative turn here, content to score 3. Keeping the castle up, maybe hoping to give away the turn. A giveaway here, of course, would allow Oscar the opportunity to try to stop Choking Mist once again. Of course, though, every turn without engagement is going to put Sean further and further ahead. The big gouache strength is secondaries, but can't count Oscar out yet. Still, lots of Warhammer to go here. Oscar calling end of turn, opting not to engage and scoring 3. We're rolling prio here. Oscar rolling a 5. Sean rolling a 1, as is typical for him. Absolutely delighted to see that roll. Oscar, I believe, has handed the turn back to Sean. Again, as we said prior, putting the ball back in Sean's court, seeing if he can get Sean to engage, but also, of course, giving him another opportunity to stop choking Mist. Putting him on the back end of the turn. Oscar probably feeling that he desperately needs a double turn to really crack this castle and get into the key support pieces. We'll see if he can win this following prio, but we'll also see how things go with the advancement on the castle if Sean engages. The Wargog right now is buried due south of the right unit of DaBoyz, the one that is between the center and center right objective. To the right of the top right Gorgrunta. There's a small gap, and then there's a miniature there. That is the Wargog Prophet. So, of course, with that, his stare is stretching across all of the surface area of Sean's units. Right now, sans the edge of Gobsprak. Maybe not the furthest edge of the DaBoyz as well on the right side. A little close. We heard earlier Oscar with the word of the weekend, Parallax. Hard to judge from this perspective. Yes, Ryan calling out as well that the Wargog is on the objective and therefore is covering the entire objective with his stare. We'll see how things pan out here. Of course, we've talked about the Wargog Prophet being a slot machine model, giving Sean a freebie roll to do D3 mortals, but then again, also giving the potential on later rolls for him to deal D6 mortals to himself if he rolls a 1 or 2. Sean deep in thought, asking a couple questions about Oscar's options for commands. Got to play this carefully now. Both armies have lots of sneaky tools in the combat phase to make the other very upset. Sean is spinning 2 dice in hand. I think we all know what he is thinking, which of those models he is staring intently at, but we will find out shortly. Could also be mulling over some of his casting options as well. Of course, got to plan out those battle tactics. We've talked about the fact that Sean has used 2 of his strong book-exclusive secondaries already in this battle. Using the sneak up battle tactic turn 1 to keep Gobsprak within 3 inches of a terrain piece, scoring 2 victory points, and then also using the That's Our Turf now, moving 2 Ironjawz units within 3 inches of the center of the board. I believe that roll may have been a delayed Catacross command point steal that did not go off, or it may have also been Oscar's heroic. I think it was a CP steal. We are now in battle round 3. Oscar scoring 3 points in his turn. Top of the round, it is Sean O'Shaughnessy's turn. We are very close to the midpoint of this game. About an hour and a half into it. Not a single body has hit the floor. Only damage still being a miscast from Gobsprack. This might be the Wargog Prophet. Sean's talking about his 4-up ward. Trying to measure as closely as they can and see if the Morghast are in. Looks like the Morghast should be out from this view just based on the location of the Wargog on the center objective. Looks like it is just the Immerse. The objective, of course, being 12 inches across, 6 inches each way from the center. Looks like Sean has hit 0 damage on the freebie roll from the Wargog. We are beginning to gamble. Weighing the slots, the most exciting miniature in Age of Sigmar. Looks like Sean has opted to stop casting potential, or stop rolling. Actually, he may not have even rolled at all. He had gestured to it. He had talked about the 4-up war, but it looks like he may not have taken the gamble and opted simply to cast instead, throwing a primal at the cast.
You might rally over there. You're gonna kill him this turn. Next turn, I'm gonna be
rolling a 4 from the looks of it on whichever cast this is here. We'll get a table update on the spells that are live once the hero phase has completed. Skipping over the Wargog, definitely an interesting choice. But he might find these spells more valuable. The Wargog, as I mentioned previously, does have the very crucial Hoarfrost, which is great to allow Sean to chip into Oscar's units, which have high saves. I think definitely an argument to be made for either route here. Gobsprack is advancing on the right objective, moving towards the top, maybe eyeing that support hero. That was a hero phase move, so that was going to be from the Sneaky Miasma spell. It's a Cruel Boys lore spell that allows a monster to make a Cruel Boys monster to make a hero phase move. We saw that employed in round 1 on stream as well. It was allowing the Corpse Rippa Vulcha to fly a huge amount across the table. If I recall correctly, the movement characteristic on those is 14 inches, so moving 28 inches. We'll double check that in a moment here, just for consistency's sake. Make sure I am telling you the same information. Gobsprack has a movement characteristic of 14 inches, and I believe the Vulcha is the same. My memory serves me well. Incredibly fast when moving twice. The exposed Mortis in here, potentially offering up an opportunity for Gobsprack to get in, but we'll see. Mortis Praetorians is all about that counter charge, baby.
Yeah, because if not, he's not holding it. Because the line is in front of the mob hopper. That's why I just want to verify that real quick.
Alright,
I think Sean there was simply adjusting his miniatures. I think 2 of them may have been caught on each other, correcting it. It's an incredibly patient game so far. Both players trying to find an opportunity. 2 castles, and which of these 2 players will engage in siege warfare? Sean advancing into the movement phase now, which means in a couple minutes here we will try to get a table update on these spells that are live. I'm actually going to step away for a moment here. Let's see if we can get the battle tactic back from Sean here while he is advancing his pieces and just confirm at the table what buffs are live. Julius offering compliments to the casting team in the chat. Thank you very much, Julius. Very much appreciated. I know you had mentioned previously that you were rather new to it and asking about some of the different aspects of the game state, so love to see some new players in here as well. Age of Sigmar, an excellent community. I've played many games in my time, but definitely the most welcoming community of the bunch that I've been a part of. So power to all of the Age of Sigmar players for making the game so great. And totally encourage you to check out some events if you're considering it. Golden Sprue was actually my first GT 2 years ago. I had transplanted over from playing card games for years, and they welcomed me with open arms, so highly recommend. I was able to peruse a couple tables, get a couple table updates for us, get an update on the game state here. Actually, it was thought that Oscar's construct spell to give the 4-up mortal wound ward had failed after the primal die. Actually, Sean had failed to stop it, which means that is live, which encouraged his decision to not fire with the Wargog Prophet, thinking that with the 4-up mortal wound ward, it was not worth it to waste the potential for damage there, which is a decision that I think is perfectly understandable. Sean moving on with his movement phase here. He has called Intimidate the Invaders, which of course he will score this turn based on his current board position, likely looking at a 5-point turn. He was able to get Sneaking Miasma off in the hero phase, and he laid down Choking Mist once again, applying a -1 to attacks debuff to the OCR Bone Reaper's castle. So Oscar's gamble here, handing the priority back, hoping to stop that spell. Did not pan out. That debuff is live, so we're going to see the it looks like they are remembering that terrain exists. It is real. Sean actually, hilariously, as I was acquiring a table update and taking a look at the battle tactics, moved his Ardboys onto the deadly piece of terrain that is to the left of the center objective. Deadly, of course, being a condition on the terrain that If you finish certain types of moves within 1 inch of it on a roll of 1, you will take D3 mortal wounds. Sean, always lucky, rolling a 1 and then taking 3 mortal wounds on his AoS, losing 2 bodies, which he was very happy with. That being said, advancing forward here, not a particularly successful casting phase aside from the choking miss, but I think that really is the key bit here. No Hoarfrost live, no Mystic Shield live. Reinforced Constructs is live. The -1 to hit is imposed by Catacross on the Gorgruntas in the back, so they will probably stay in the rear of the castle. I believe Oscar interrupted the combat phase for the battle plan condition. Sean mulling over his movement still, obviously a few things to consider. This is part of the power of the Mortis Praetorian subfaction. As you're considering these movements, I mean, any point of contact that you're making with this army on the charge, you have to really sit there and think, well, what else can charge me? What does that do to my engagements? How's my activation control? How much can I get out of this army before he is able to multi-attack my units that are engaging with multiple of his? And of course, Oscar has activation control on the charge periodically as well. We talked about the Morghast Archive, which have a fight first ability if they roll an 8 or higher on the charge. They also fly, so they will pop over the screens and get into a key unit, fight first. We saw this round 1 on stream, or rather round 2 with Oscar playing Ray Squires, who was playing the Slaves of Darkness. Ray sent them his Varangard. Oscar responded with the Mortis Praetorian's countercharge, and then threw the Archive right in. Piecemealed the Varangard. Sean making a short charge and meticulously measuring to ensure that he is... Looks like he's trying to avoid engaging those units. Although we may see a counter charge go out anyway. I think he may have engaged the Immortus here. Okay, it looks like his goal is to engage the Mortis Guard on the left side. Sean also trying to avoid the deadly terrain. He has had the fear of God instilled in him by this terrain piece after losing 2 of his AoS.
Hey, Sean, could you get Nick training for me?
We'll see what other charges come out here. We may see a Gobspract into the Foot Hero as well. Ryan Musgrove in chat saying that people do not respect Deadly enough to be honest. 100% true. Deadly terrain is fake up until the point that it is not. Easy to forget about, but it hurts every time it matters. But Sean respecting it here, learning from the movement phase. We see the counter charge coming in on Oscar's side, it looks like, from the Morghasts. Sean and Oscar ribbing each other about the dice luck. At the table, Oscar making a nice solid charge, throwing the Foot Hero into Sean's Brute Ragers, putting a little bit of a wrench in his plans. This is going to remove a key hammer from the chat.
I'm not paying attention
of course,
to life.
the hero is also going to be within 3 inches of the Immortus Guard, though, so if the Brute Ragers pile in and inflict damage upon it, it is going to pass on a 2-up on a mandatory basis to the Immortus. Still some value to accrue from the Ragers. We'll see how that pans out. Sean rolling an 8 to charge with Gobsprack. And it looks like he may be going in with Gobsprack. He's considering it. The hero that he wanted to smack has moved, but it looks like he might be interested in charging from the other direction. Trying to avoid Catacross here. Sean probably also +1 on the charge due to his WA abilities. I believe at this stage, I forgot to get the WA count just to confirm, but he is at +1 to hit and wound. While they are finishing out these charges and moving into the combat phase, I do want to provide a couple other table updates. Logan Vanderwalker and Dan Lynch, I believe, have concluded their game, with Logan, I believe, walking away with the win. It looked pretty grim early on for the Slaves of Darkness, but the combination of the Mortal Wound after saves and the high saves was too much for the Stonehorns to bear over time. And Logan battling back across the board with his retinue of Chaos Knights and Baron Guard and taking out the remaining Stonehorns. Moving down range, Marcella appears to be in a commanding position in her game over Brian Kissel's Gargans. I talked a little bit about the Ogres and Seraphon game that's going on downrange as well, but it appears that the Meat Fist Ogres are slightly on the back foot, but definitely still in a reasonable position to take the game. And of course, we have this table before us, this one for all the marbles, the 5-0. I see another charge roll coming out.
Also, we were
Looks like that is a 10, although unclear which unit it is that he is charging with. We'll be able to tell here in a moment for Sean measuring from the work run tips.
Actually, how much time did we were 3 hours behind, right?
Very interesting to see. Let's see if he takes it. It's a solid charge, but I think it's only getting the lead digs into combat. And of course, there is the added danger of the Morghasts. Looks like Sean may be opting out of the charge, rolling it for the heck of it to see what he can get, but respecting the potential for the Morghast to make him very sad. Let's break that down a little bit. I mean, we've talked a lot about the Morghast and the threat they represent with the counter charge charging off the screens. Oscar, of course, using the counter charge here with the hero to delay the Brute Ragers, but you really don't want to tag the Morghasts. 2-inch reach, 3 attacks a pop, 3s and 3s, -2 damage, or -2 rend rather, excuse me, 3 damage a pop. You cannot use commands within 3.
So ignoring rend 1 means if something has rend 1, it doesn't affect them, but if something has rend 2, it's still -2. Okay, you're good.
Yeah, that's what that's
Okay, you meant +1.
Yeah, it's +1 to save, +1 to hit.
Okay.
Players talking about some of the OBR mechanics here. Sean's still mulling over that charge from the looks of it. A couple of things I want to talk about. The Morghast, we have highlighted the fight first, the counter charge, but there is, of course, also the 5-up ward where they are wholly within 12 inches of any Ossiarch Bone Reaper's heroes. This is incredibly important. Ossiarch Bone Reapers do have recursion mechanics. However, those mechanics specifically do not name the Morghast, so when those Morghasts go down, they are dying. The ward gives them a little bit of resiliency that will allow them to stay in the game longer. Of course, Oscar can still use the traditional rally to try to hit a 6 and bring one back. We did see that during his round 2 game. And with so many command points being generated by the Ossiarch Bone Reapers, it's definitely worth the trade. You know, I alluded a little bit to the Ossiarch Bone Reaper recursion, but I do want to talk about that too. Several of the Ossiarch Bone Reaper's heroes have an ability where you can pick up to 3 different friendly Ossiarch Bone Reapers units wholly within 24 inches of them. Catacross, Arkin, Foot heroes have a variation of this ability, but effectively, the gist of these abilities is that you are targeting either a non-Immortus Guard or Stalker's unit, and then you are either healing 3 wounds allocated to it or restoring slain models that have a wound characteristic of 3 or less. If they are Immortus Guard or Stalkers, on a 3-up, you can return a slain model with 4 wounds allocated to it, or if wounds are allocated to the unit, you heal 3. This used to work a little differently. The key bit there is that 4 wounds allocated to it. So, of course, if you are down a model and you get 3 procs on your unit of Immortus Guard, you are going to go from 2 models. On a 3-up, you are going to return 1. It will have 4 wounds allocated to it. Then your next proc will reduce the 4 wounds allocated to 1 wound allocated, and then your final proc will reduce 1 to 0. So you're not returning too many Immortus Guard at a single time. Balancing out some of the recursion there. Initially, with the OCR Bone Reaper's book, it was incredibly punishing to leave any models left in a Immortus Guard or Stalker's unit. The Immortus Guard being particularly difficult to manage because they are 5 wounds a pop on a 3-up save, a brick of 6 of them, 30 wounds on a 3-up, often a 2-up due to the defensive buffs of OBR. Being able to be given a 4-up ward against mortals, which we have seen come down here. It was difficult to remove, so we have seen this change, so the recursion is a little weaker, but nevertheless still incredibly important for this matchup. As the game goes, if those units aren't finished, they're going to come back, and unfortunately for Sean, he does not have that same luxury with the Orc War Clan's units. He will be able to rally some of his models when they're outside of combat, as one does, but that will be the extent of his recursion. Getting back into it here, it does look like Sean is proceeding on into combat. He has scored his battle tactic here, which was Intimidate the Invaders. He is going to score 5 for holding the center and center right objective. Sean putting 7 saves at Neg 1. There's no Hoarfrost on these Ardboys, so they are not going to have the same punching power that they did into the Varangard last round. Looks like those Ardboys have come in after rolling some of his saves. Actually, those may have been his wards. Either way, it looks like we are losing one of the Immortus Guard. Unclear if there's any damage spilling over into the next, which of course, as I said, will impact the ability of Oscar to recur those models. In this case, using Arkin's ability, if there's damage that spills over, would be, it would require him to remove the damage. If it's 3 or less, then I think you actually are correct, Ryan. Good call there. That was likely into the foot hero, but passing. That explains the rolls there. The single set rather than rolling saves and then wards from the looks of it. Looks like you just passed those off. It's unclear to me what was happening with the number of dice there, but I think that makes perfect sense. Anyway, as I was saying, the additional damage onto another Immortus Guard, it doesn't look like there is any, but if there were, if it were 3 or less, that would take the first proc of the recursion mechanics from the OCR Bone Reapers, followed by recovering a model on a 3-up. If you succeed on that, bringing it back with 4 wounds, and then bringing it down to 1 wound allocated because of healing the next 3. So, killing with a little overage can be super valuable if you are in the business of playing the attrition game against an OBR army. You see another Immortus Guard go down. It does not look like there is any damage spilling over again. Sean and Oscar bantering about their die rolls as they always do. It's just like any other game of tabletop simulator online. But this time, for all the marbles. As I said previously, the winner of this round will advance with a 5-0 record and is a likely favorite for either Best General or Best Overall, depending on hobby and sportsmanship scores. DaBoyz GTs utilizing an amalgamation of your sportsmanship score, your hobby score, and your tournament score. Both of these players, good hobbyists, very charming people who play at the table, likely have very strong sports scores as well, so I could see either of them coming away from this with a very real shot at Best Overall. We're coming up on the 2-hour mark in the round. We are still at the top of 3 here. This is potentially not the turn that Sean was looking for, but of course he is peeling away some of those Immortus Guard in the front. I don't believe the Morghast are tagged at this stage. It looks like Sean successfully avoided that. Looks like we see Oscar going back in. Some saves coming out from Sean. Oh, actually, that may have been some more of Oscar's saves. I think so far, so good for Oscar here. Obviously, needs to be able to get control of one of these other objectives, but he is holding together here. Oh, actually, I believe those may have been the saves and after saves for Gobsprak in the top engagement. We'll see how much Gobsprak does. I don't believe he has bracketed yet. I think I overheard the players saying he took either 5 or 6. We'll get an update on the board state going into Oscar's turn here once we wrap up the scoring. It does appear that Sean will score 5 out of this engagement, regardless of how things shake out in the remainder of the turn.
Lord knows I did a third one. That was less attacks.
Sean rolling through his Gobsprak attacks now into the Cavalos Death Riders. Oscar looking for a 4-up there from the looks of it. It looks like he did achieve that. Some additional saves coming in. Let's see how things go here. A lot of the other tables are beginning to draw to a close as well. While these two are rolling through the combat, I do want to provide some updates on the other games. This round, Ross McEwen did triumph over Hunter Armstrong's Monster Trucks. Hunter, one of the lists I shouted out early in the event, as a bit of a sleeper hit, but falling to the 8 Morghast and Mortis Praetorians. Last round on stream, we had Alan Knowles playing against Sean. He is once again playing against Big Wah, piloted by Zach McComb. At this stage, it does look like Alan has a slight advantage on the board, but there is still lots of miniatures on the table. We'll keep that table again in a little while here. Moving down from there, Dan Lynch did lose to Logan Vanderwalker. Logan piloting the Slaves to Darkness with a series of Vanguard and Chaos Knights. Dan Lynch piloting the Ogre Law Tribe's Monster Truck list, just like Hunter as well. So both of them ending the day 3-2, but still a 60% win rate for the Monster Trucks, and both played well into very difficult matchups throughout the event that I was able to observe at some of the other tables. Moving down from there, Jeff Weed has won via concessions to Bob Pisano. We had a couple players at the tail end here leave just so they could make it ahead of some incoming poor weather back to their homes. Moving down from there, looks like Marcella and Brian are near wrapping up, but Marcella appears to be substantially ahead. Jeremy Williams and Mike Mullis still going. Last time I checked that table, Jeremy Williams was pressing a little bit of the advantage into Mike, but it looks like Mike is still holding a fair few units on the table. Ray and Jason still deep in their game, some of our other matchups as well, so hopefully we'll see some results come down too. And then of course at the tail end of our list of players, we have Scott Dornbush losing to Eric Jeanette, Sons of Bahamut, and then we have Rochelle Miller falling to James Kent, who we had on stream on round 1. Winning with the Cruel Boys over the Seraphon as well. So a couple updates there. We'll check back on some of these games shortly. Jumping back to it, it looks like Gothrak has peeled away a single horse. We see Sean doing some pile-ins now.
It's supposed to be
Trying to get in those brute razors, but of course, pokey bits, overhanding, or rather, overreaching weapons, tagging other miniatures, making it a little difficult there. Let's see how much damage these razors do. They are a base damage characteristic of 2. They are an excellent independent operator unit for the orcs. For those of you just joining now, this is the DaBoyz Golden Sprue GT Round 5 stream. This is the last round of coverage for the weekend. My name is Tyler Bushy, and I have been the voice of the Golden Sprue GT this weekend. And we are in the midst of watching an intense game between Oscar Savastio, piloting the OBR Mortis Praetorians list against Sean O'Shaughnessy's Warclan's Big Wa Army. Both of these players, teammates, practice partners, friends, clubmates of myself. Played a lot of games against both of these. I've talked a lot about both of their practice regimens coming into this event, list construction, we talked shop about the meta, list design choices. Very exciting to see two of my teammates at top tables together. Oscar looks like may have missed a roll here that the players are correcting. But as the players sort this out, they are getting to the midpoint of the game here. Sean is going to be on 15 points, it appears, going into the midpoint, so we'll see how things pan out, but excited to see how this game carries through from here. Obviously, this is our 2 undefeated players, so whoever wins here is going to have a very strong chance at either a best general or best overall appearance. Very excited for both of these individuals, either way walking out with a 4-1. For Oscar, notably, it would be his first 4-1 finish at a singles GT, which is absolutely awesome. But either way, we will be crowning a new Golden Sprue GT champion this weekend.
Are you have like an inside or something? Yes! Just tell them, like, dude. Let's play around it. Alright. Take whatever date you want. Well,
We have our trusty head judge at tableside, Madigan Mason, observing the action. Also table judging the rest of our event as well. Shout out to Madigan for a splendid job, of course. We still have not confirmed her opinion of the soup that she was talking about prior, but we will have to get an idea of that rating at some point. Looks like the Morghast may have been engaged, and so now they are coming in and likely to crack those hard boys. Perhaps Sean was not able to avoid it. Actually, looks like Oscar maybe reconsidering, deciding to activate the Immortus Guard first. I'm going to double check with the players, just confirm the activations here. Does look like Sean's still on track to score 5, and then we will be into Oscar's turn on the bottom of 3 in a few moments here as well.
Josh, yo, do they all go?
All right, we are back at it. I confirm that the Morghast were tagged, but Oscar, of course, choosing to activate the Immortus card first, peeling away those Ardboy, exposing the Brute Ragers as well. Still in Sean's turn here, tidying up the board. Looks like Oscar is fighting twice with the Immortus Guard.
No, I know.
You only have professional.
Head Judge Madigan Mason confirming on table side that this is a valid play. Pylons being a part of the fight sequence, meaning that Oscar can issue the command and then pile in despite having killed the unit that the Immortus Guard were engaged with. A very interesting movement tech that Oscar can use to close in advance of his turn, tidying up the amount of charge that he is going to need going into the bottom of 3 here. Looks like Sean has scored 5, and we are now moving into Oscar's turn.
But you haven't missed that one time. Jesus.
Oscar bullying Sean at the table. Sean looking worriedly at the photo of his daughter, wondering if he is coming home with a frown on his face. Tensions are high. Both players looking for that result. But of course, having a nice level of camaraderie amongst them while they enjoy a game of Age of Sigmar, both players doing their best to have a good, even game. Now, very interestingly, the unit that Oscar threw into the Ragers and the ArgBoys was his general. So that unit going down has allowed him access to the reprisal battle tactic. This is going to allow Oscar to try to get back on the unit that killed his general, which in this case is going to be that unit of Brute Ragers that is adjacent to the Morghast and the Immortus Guard. Oscar's going to have a really good chance to punch into Sean's castle. And he's on the back end of the turn. So he very well could pick up a double and peel away a lot of these Orc War Clans pieces.
But I'm just saying, you can't roll for Locust in that. I want to make sure. I appreciate this.
Oscar no longer having access to the Antorian Acolytes Battalion as well. Now that his general is down, he only has a single Acolyte on the table. This is going to give Sean a slight edge on the Primal Dice battle here. We'll see how the Primal Prio goes here. But Sean picking up the priority and being able to cast with that little added bit of advantage. The +1 from his sub-faction abilities could give him some tools to dig out of this scenario. Depending on how much violence is committed here, we may see Oscar take the center objective. We'll find out. The 5er is exactly what Oscar is looking to attain. Of course, still plenty of Age of Sigmar to play here. Grand strategy is still being sought out as well. Oscar still has a little ways to go before he can call his accomplished. Notably, all Sean needs to do to deny Oscar's grand strat is to kill 3 Immortus Guard, 2 Morghast Orc Archai, and the 4 Cavalry. On the other hand, Oscar needs to kill Sean's battle line and keep his alive, and also stop his general from getting... or rather, Oscar needs to destroy Sean's battle line, keep his own alive. Oscar also going to be seeking to stop his opponent's general from getting into his territory.
Oh, you already ready?
Yeah, I got it. Reprisal, right?
Yeah, he's doing reprisal.
Yeah. Players just giving me a battle tactic update.
On the
Very courteous of them. As I said previously, this is on the Brute Ragers. We'll see how Oscar pulls things together here. He's in a great position to score this battle tactic. I'm super intrigued to see where this goes. Both players fighting incredibly hard. still a Wargog leading in the wings. All it takes is a single priority roll loss from Oscar here. Sean being favored on breaking ties due to going first in the battle round. A Merciless Blizzard could come out as well. Of course, Arkin providing Oscar some comfort against magic, just due to the +2 to casting Unbind and Dispel. Oscar's entire army having retreat and charge on a command. Taking advantage of that here, he will be able to withdraw the horses here and allow Catacross to engage Gobsprat. Gobsprat is currently finest hour, giving him a +1 to save and a +1 to wound. He has a 6-up ward built into his war scroll. So we will see how things go here. Notably, the horses do have a wounds characteristic of 3, allowing Oscar to bring those back using the Mortarch ability from one of his heroes. We're going to see some violence. Notably, Oscar doing this, Gobsprat in the topmost part of the board, meaning he does not have a lot of room for a redeploy. We will see how things go here for both players. As I have said previously, both of these players, pals, practice mates, club mates of myself. We've got some of our club mates in the chat as well. Excited to see either of these two come away with a victory here. Dan Riker in the chat, couldn't think of a cooler finals. I wholeheartedly agree. As I said previously, both of these players working incredibly hard. We should all aspire to play even half as many practice games as these two have in the weeks leading up to this event, mulling over list ideas, tweaks, changes, seeking feedback, thoughts. Always open to improvement, always aspiring to do better on the table. Oscar doing some measuring here. The Morghast already tagging the Brute Ragers. No redeploys will be coming out here. We do see Arkin shifting over. This is going to put 5 bodies on the objective, potentially. Arkin is a monster. Oscar still mulling it over.
How many battle tactics?
Looks like Arkin is just off the objective. So he's going to have to make a charge. I think based on where the Brute base is located, he's unable to land on the objective without making that charge. Looks like the Brute is right on the top part of the 3-inch mark on the center objective. Of course, engagement range in Age of Sigmar is 3 inches. To enter combat with another miniature, they are going to have to charge you, or you are going to have to charge them. So Oscar getting as close to that mark as possible so he can have short and easy charges. He's moving into the charge phase now and successfully charges Catacross into Gobsprat in the topmost part of the board. Catacross, as I mentioned previously, has an ability where he will fight on the bottom bracket if he is within 3 inches of an enemy hero. And uniquely, Catacross improves as he gets deeper and deeper into his bracket. So we will see how things shake out. Oscar fiddling with the horses in the top part here, mulling over his options there. We're probably going to see a pair of charges come in from the Immortus Guard and Arkin into the Brute Ragers. It looks like there's maybe 5 erasures on the board right now. So we'll see how things go.
Sean, I tried to just put that guy back. Okay. So we'll just say they're all in. They have the blue.
We'll see how deep Oscar is able to get into enemy lines here. Those gore grunters on bottom, -1 to hit.
Yeah, you're fine.
With that, I am curious to see
You're fine.
how Sean is going to respond in this following turn. We do have a prio to get through as well. As I've mentioned previously, for those at home, Age of Sigmar does not have a binary I go, you go structure. We have a priority roll. So what that means is that at the end of each battle round, after I take a turn and you take a turn, in whichever order, we roll, and the winner of that roll is able to decide who goes first in the following battle round. Meaning that if I go second in a given battle round and I win the priority roll and elect to go first in the following one, I get to take 2 turns sequentially. So games of Age of Sigmar have all types of permutations about how they could go. That means I could go, then you could go, then you could go again, then I could go, then I could go again. There's all different ways it can go. The same game may not play the same way twice. Because of that, it is a very unique mechanic. Rewards careful play, thinking about the possibilities of a priority roll, deciding when to go in, when to step back and take a look at the board state and say, I can't be too aggressive, I might get doubled here. There's a lot of consideration there. We do see Oscar making some charges in center board. We see Arkid coming in on the top with the Blue Raiders, and we also see the Immortus Guard charging into the Gorgruntos, also tagging a Auric War Chanter. We'll get an idea of what spells are live shortly as well. But Oscar being on the back end of the turn is going to have a slight disadvantage on the priority because the player who goes first in the round does break ties. We'll see how things pan out. He very well could win and double into Sean's forces and do some serious damage. On the other hand, Sean may be able to battle back with a reverse of fortunes here and winning the priority. Oscar's unit's incredibly fighty, but Sean's are very close in terms of efficiency to his. As I said previously, Sean up on the board presently, having more bodies to place on the objectives. Oscar's grand strategy here will be a little bit easier for Sean to deny than the opposite. He needs to kill all of Sean's battle line as well as keep all of his alive, which means that Sean currently, to deny that, only has to kill those horses at the top, the 2 Angels of Death on the center objective adjacent to Arcane Wizard, and the 3 Immortus Guard that are on the bottom left portion of the center objective as well. We'll see how things pan out here. Getting into combat here. I think Oscar is working out how he wants to jump into this. Sean is mulling over battle tactics, planning his subsequent 2 turns. Mike Mullis coming to the commentary booth to report that the Ogres, peak headass embodied in a Age of Sigmar faction, have overcome the Seraphon models. Mike bringing a fun and unique Meat Fist list, using tons of units of Ogres to charge in on foot and deal mortal wounds on the charge, but overcoming Seraphon, reversing his fortunes on the table, mowing down the Space Dinosaur army. For those of you at home, I did say that correctly. This is a fantasy game and there are space dinosaurs. I don't understand it and neither should you, but they are cool. Godswreck has been removed from the board by Catacars. That is a big swing. That means the Choking Mist is no longer going to be coming down onto the OCR Bone Reapers and improving their efficiency in later turns. see how things go through here. Sean's activation now with the players discussing board state and effects that have been applied. That way Sean can make an educated decision on where to attack first.
This one. Go ahead.
Oh, I can't do it. I
Okay, okay, cool. All right,
so you get this one.
Players working out a rule there. Sean deciding on his activation here. We'll see how things pan out, what Sean decides to activate. Lots of Sean's units have ample damage potential. Looks like he is thinking about the Ragers. Notably, the Morghast did not charge in this turn. They tagged the Ragers last turn, preventing a future redeploy, but of course that does mean they will not have fight first on the charge.
What I won.
He won that?
By giving the guy my debit card.
Oh.
And he rung it through a thing and then said I won. And it only cost me $130 for the entrance. Plus another if my girlfriend asks, I'm surprised.
I'm live. You better hope she's not watching stream. Dan Lynch coming over to the commentary booth to claim that he won a new Giants model.
Prize.
Spoiler alert, he did not win it. His winning ticket was placing his debit card in the card machine, inputting his PIN, and being charged $130. So, Dan Lynch, you are on the record here. Your girlfriend at home, if she is tuned in, you are very unlucky today, sir. That being said, Dan picking up the King Broad model, a beautiful sculpt from Games Workshop, one of my favorite miniatures. I do love me some Giants. So shout out to Dan for reckless spending, but also embracing his inner destruction and buying one of the most fun models of Age of Sigmar, in my opinion. Maybe for the user. I can't speak to the opponent experience. That being said, it looks like Sean is proceeding ahead with the Gore Gruntas. Now the Gore Gruntas are -1 from Catacross, but it is important to note that they do have a +1 from the Big Wa abilities. This is going to allow them to get back to their base profile. They are not within 3 inches of the Morghast, which does mean that they are going to be able to, pardon me, they are going to be able to utilize a command to get onto 2s. They are not Horfrosted presently, but we will see how much damage they do. The Brute Ragers appear to have bounced off of either Arkan or the Morghasts and been slain in response. However, there is one still sitting and likely a second activation to come. This means Oscar's battle tactic choice, which was Reprisal, which is killing the unit that killed his general, seems likelier by the minute. This may be a strong opportunity for Oscar, with 10 models on the objective currently, to potentially pick up this objective, although we're going to have to see these Gore Gruntas get pieced up as well. I do see a War Chanter, looks to be 6 Ardboys, a Brute, maybe 11, 17, 19 models from Sean currently on objective. So we're going to have to see some of that come off the objective, 19 or 20 models. 19, I think, is including that Rager dying that is base-to-base with Arkan. Oscar fighting very hard here to get a 5-point turn, as Sean is pulling away a slight bit in the score, and of course having a weaker of the 2 grand strats. But he is doing a great job of removing some of Sean's units here. And of course we are on the prio. A single prio roll may be what this game comes down to. Oscar playing the prios, keeping himself on the back end of the turn in this round, hoping to get a double 3 into a 4. Gobsprack also down, which means that we will not see another choking mist come out of Sean's side, even if he does pick up the turn. However, There is a Wargog Prophet on the center objective. He has a 12-inch range. He covers that whole objective, and the Wargog Prophet is notably one of the worst criminals in Age of Sigmar for little to no cost, violating entire units by himself. He is violent, he is unfair, he is immensely fun. He is a hell of a game piece. So we'll have to see how lucky Sean is today. We saw him work the Wargog up to 6 wounds taken, leaving it on a single wound remaining in the previous round against Slaves to Darkness. Speaking of Slaves to Darkness, I do want to talk about the game from Zach McComb and Alan Knowles, which is coming down to the wire. Alan taking a bit of a lead early on, with the game growing increasingly close. Zach's unit of brutes bouncing off of the Chosen early on in the game, him battling back using his own unit of brute raziers. Zach running a similar list to Sean's here. But we'll see how that pans out still. Both players have a fair few miniatures on the board, but looking forward to seeing that result and which of them comes away with a 4-1. Zach also working incredibly hard ahead of this event. As I mentioned previously, Alan, this is his second Age of Sigmar GT, probably looking for a strong finish, but also a former War Machine Hordes player, so experience with tabletop miniatures games, definitely capable of pulling out a big win as well. So definitely happy to see either of those two come away with a W and a 4-1 record.
You sell these?
Yes, $50. What's that?
No, I have.
They're 55 online.
Would you be able to tell me if I won any tries?
I can't. I don't know who's done. I don't know what overall scores are.
It's snowing in Connecticut right now, so
Yeah, the
I
English
don't
are
know what price work is right now. I don't crunch the numbers. I can't.
right.
So we got a problem.
We do see that Brute Rager come off the center objective, pausing here to see what combat interactions are going on, but that will secure Oscar's battle tactic, scoring him 2 points. It looks like he still has 15 models on the objective. I think I see 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 19, oh, maybe 21 from Sean. I see a War Chanter. We will see what the pigs and this War Chanter are able to do. Sean may hold on to this objective, which would leave Oscar with a 3-point turn. But of course, we could still see the double activation coming from the Immortus. We could see a lot of stuff fly off this objective, so TBD. Oscar definitely looking to put as much combat damage into his opponent here as possible. Sean trying to stem the bleeding here on the center objective and pick up a key priority here so he can hope for the Wargog and the Weird Knob here to commit equivalent acts of terror on Oscar's army. We're going to find out very soon. I've mentioned this a couple times throughout the stream, but we are up on the 2.5-hour mark roughly, so I just want to reiterate to our viewership here that this is a game between two friends, two clubmates. These two came to the event together. Oscar staying at Sean's place over the weekend. Clubmates of myself, both very good players working very hard to get this result. Both of them talented hobbyists, great sports at the table. No matter what happens, I know the two of these players are going to give each other a big hug and cheer for the other as hard as they possibly can when it comes to awards shortly after this game. Looks like Sean saves falling apart here on the Gorgonzas. He is taking a lot of damage, peeling away 3 of the Gorgonzas here. Saves definitely being a bit of a struggle for Sean, who has the classic O'Shaughnessy dice on the save front. But it looks like he is still holding this objective. The Immortus card will be able to activate again. We'll see what happens with that. Still anybody's game, but Oscar playing this very surgically, playing incredibly patiently, and being rewarded for it with how he's interacting with Sean's army here. He's on the back end of the turn, which is a great spot to be. you know, we talked a bit to Oscar before, and he came into this. He knew he had a plan. He knew that the secondaries favored Sean, and that he was going to have to find an opportune moment to dive into this line, piece apart some of these units, and begin racking up points. And I think he has chosen an opportune moment where the scoring is not too far apart, and he has plenty of opportunity to even the game state. Maybe even pull ahead in the long run here. We'll see, but this is, you know, the common theme for Oscar throughout this event. Every game he's gone into, we've talked to him both on and off stream, he has had a plan, and he has hopped on the table, and he has executed one-to-one with that plan. Dice be damned. Well-researched, well-practiced. He's also had a tough schedule. Played Marcella at the end of day one yesterday in an incredibly tight game to close the day, pulling ahead in the final turns. Sean also overcoming several difficult opponents to be here, playing a very good game against Alan Knowles last round. Sean pressing some of his Ardboys into Arkin, laying a little bit of damage onto the unit. It looks like he may be counting his law points. With that, I am going to take a moment here. I believe we are almost between turns. I'm just going to take a peek at the buffs that are live, and then I will come back for an update on that, and then we will see how the priority goes. Sean finally winning a crucial prio, and although he took some heat on the Battle Shock for the Ardboys fighting Arkin, he was able to hold on to the objective even keel, forcing Oscar to score 3 points in that turn. 2 for Battle Tactic, 1 for the leftmost objective. This is going to give Sean a 4-point edge going into the final battle round, or second to final battle round here. We are in battle round 4 at the top, and it is Sean O'Shaughnessy's turn. Players are discussing the board state a little bit and mulling things over. I'm going to take this moment as well. I just wanted to update on the priority there, just to take a quick break and grab a drink, because Lord knows this game is stressful for them, and it's stressing me out too. I must regretfully inform the chat that the bar has closed. The window has closed for me to get a sex on the beach, so instead I will be stressed and parched in the commentary booth, observing the tail end of this game here. Let's see how things shake out for both of these players. Current score 11-15 in Sean O'Shaughnessy's favor after 3 rounds. It is Sean O'Shaughnessy's turn at the top of 4 rather. Very excited to see this game meet its logical conclusion over the following 2 battle rounds. The Star Wars Legion players are working on their words in the background, so I am going to be on and off mute to provide insights here just for the sake of our viewership's ears. Sean reviewing his available secondaries remaining. Both players staking out that path. How do they get to the finish with a winning score? This is going to come down to a matter of just a few points. This is going to be a fitting conclusion for the event. One of these players coming away with a 5-0. Many players in the tournament hall taking interest in the Age of Sigmar finals here, with them trying to work out the board state and the current score. We will see how things go here. Both players incredibly close to being able to pull out the big 5-0. Looks like Sean is issuing the Wargog, and he may have just blown himself off the table.
I mean, there's nothing you can do, literally. It's just, I don't do anything.
Sean failing with the Wargog here, it appears. That may have been Merciless Blizzard as well. Unclear which of the two. We'll get an update from the table after the turn. But not the damage that you're looking for coming out of the orcs there. It did appear that way, Dan Riker, in the chat, that the Prophet may have just blown himself up, but it's not clear because Sean has not placed damage on it or removed it yet from the board. I think Oscar had rolled some wards. I think maybe that was the case, but he is mulling over the consequences before removing the miniature. Oh, no, it looks like the Wargog is still in this, continuing on. 3 mortals coming out. I think we've come close. I think Sean was stuck on deciding whether to stay or continue, but he is continuing to gamble. He is going for broke, doing 2 more damage to Oscar here. Warding 1, Oscar's wards overperforming here. But a Morghast has come off the table. 2 more damage coming on to the next, one of which is warded. Notably, the claps are not for the Wargog Prophet, that is for the Star Wars players. Sean dealing 3 more damage on the Morghast, putting him up to, I believe, 3 taken. 3 more damage. This could remove the Morghast. And that is a dead unit of Morghast. That is a big loss for Oscar. That is one of his remaining battle line units. He has the horses and the Immortal Scarred left, but that was one of his key hammers, and it was turning off commands for the Orc War clans that were currently engaged. Sean also still having a 10-man unit of Iron Jaws Brutes.
I forget what that one is. That's the one.
It did look ugly at the beginning, but Sean O'Shaughnessy staying the course through the Wargog rolls and getting the target. He also called bait and trap for his battle tactic this turn, so we will see how that pans out for him.
We get 2 primals. I'm glorious benefactor.
Sean has rolled 2 primals as well, so there's a chance we could see a Merciless Wizard come out here. Other casts, he'll have a strong casting edge. As I said previously, Oscar lost his general, therefore he is not benefiting from the Acolytes Battalion.
Hello. All right. So.
Sean holding over next moves here and his casting sequencing. Star Wars players continuing to clap in the background, awarding their Best Sportsmanship Award. I do want to talk a little bit about the battle tactic coming out for the Orc War clans. This is a bait and trap. This is going to force Sean O'Shaughnessy to retreat with 2 of his units and charge with 2 more. He is in a substantial position to do so, but worth noting he is on the top of the battle round, so his opponent will be taking a turn after this.
That's a match.
Sean appears to be taking the conservative route. He's moving the Brutes up into the upper right corner of the table, working on preserving that grand strategy. Interesting to see, considering that he does need to make charges here, and that is one of his best hammers that was close to the action.
While Marcus is picking his prize.
He is retreating, however, onto the far
best in
objective,
hobby.
ceding that center objective, but forcing Oscar to
Best
choose
in
a
hobby
direction to
is
capitalize, and
Henry.
of course capturing the leftmost objective, scoring at least 3 points this turn. Oscar redeploying here, but
and best
redeploying onto the
overall
objective, but not
grand
enough to
champion
swap control.
And the winner of the absolutely insane belt
Star Wars awards coming to their logical conclusion on the far side of the room here, so I'm jumping back into a little more of the open mic commentary here. Sean with the War Chancer and the Weird or Wargog Shaman, looking for his charge opportunities. He has retreated 2 units. He left the War Chancer in that was in combat with the Immortus Guard previously, playing to his outs here, trying to make some scoring differential happen.
All right, next up.
I am going to take a moment to step away and just survey the board quickly. I want to take a look at the position of any units on table. See if we're missing any key bits here for this end game. So a little bit about the end game here. Sean is throwing away some of his key bits on the objective, aiming to score 5 here. He has scored his battle tactic. Playing for the end game here, he has over 30 WAP points, which is going to enable him to score a tactic, even if tabled in the final round.
That will be Mike Cirillo.
Looking to get his units into as good of a place as they can be to potentially score the Grand Strat in the final round. The Weird Mount Shaman is dead. He is down to 2 War Chancers, 3 Pigs, a Wargog Prophet, a pair of Ardboys, and of course that unit of Brutes.
Is Evan Bullrez.
We'll see how things go.
Good job, Evan.
Rolling through some of the combats here. We'll see how things pan out in this final round, but it looks like if all goes according to plan, Sean should theoretically be able to finish with at least 22 points. Oscar's still in striking distance if he can pick up a full 5. We'll have to see what battle tactics he has in store. Oscar has utilized Magical Dominance. He has also used Reprisal, and he has also used Intimidate the Invaders. Both players have scored every battle tactic they have called so far. However, Oscar only scoring 3 in turns 2 and 3 based on objective control. Sean having lots of bodies on the center objective. This game incredibly tight. Sean pulling away on the points but losing on the table. Oscar trying to get within striking distance. We'll see how things pan out here.
The incredible display.
Looks like we're rolling through some of the activations. The Weird Mount Shaman has gone down. Sean doing everything in his power to tag Arkin, preventing Arkin from escaping in the following turn to make it to the Brutes. Despite the situation on board, Sean's still in high spirits, working his way through some of the earlier roles, having some difficulty in the casting phase and the hero phase more broadly. Doing his best as he can to capitalize on the position here. whatever he can do to fend off the scoring on the opposite side of the table. Oscar, on the other hand, pushing up from the back foot here, trying to play catch-up.
Pat Malcolm. And player's choice is Nick Butler.
Oscar bringing out the Immortus guard that is going to remove one of the War Chancers.
Get the small fries in 5 minutes.
Sean O'Shaughnessy, as predicted, has scored 5 points here. We are in bottom of 4. This is Oscar's
We're
turn.
going into the overall for the faction. Note that you have.
Now, I believe that unit of Immortus Guard, they did do the fight twice earlier, so they could advance. They are unable to fight twice here, which means the War Chancer does lock up Arkin. However, Sean is out the caster, so he is going to have to heroic willpower and pray to God that he is able to stop some of the hero phase moves to keep Arkin locked in.
And top Empire is Vincent.
Sean forcing his opponent to split attacks. We'll see how things pan out. Oscar, of course, able to put some additional models on the leftmost objective. But he is going to want to send those horses east. That way they can maybe try to get... He really wants to try to do something to stop those birds in the Grand Strat. That's really the win condition here.
Top clones.
We'll see how things continue to pan out. So looking for an opportunity for maybe Mighty Destroyers and move into the far corner. Actually, he may just be able to auto-run 6 inches into the far corner of the table, getting wholly within 11 inches of the top edge of the board. Unlocking his Grand Strat, putting him at 25 points, including his final turn's battle tactic. Oscar would need to score 10 and the Grand Strat to come 1 point shy of that. The Grand Strat is locked. He has 13 points available to him on full scoring for these final 2 turns.
Could I please have
Sean also potentially
Derek up to the stage?
looking to end on 24. Although if he does that and drop the Grand Strat, Oscar will win on the tiebreakers. Unless, of course, a battle tactic is failed. Also curious to see what battle tactics Oscar pulls out here.
Could I get
We'll take a second here, a moment to double check the battle tactics that are called. See what Oscar has called. Oscar has called his Sculptors, OCR Bone Reapers book battle tactic. He's going to have that small foot hero that is due north of the Auric Gorgruntas on the leftmost side of the table contest the same objective that he is controlling with the bodyguard unit, which is the Immortus Guard. So we can expect to see the foot hero move over. Maybe we will see the combination of the horses and catapults move on to that bottom left objective. It does make you wonder, what does this mean for Arkin? Where is he going? Is the War Chancer going to survive? And of course, there is a priority. Being able to escape may also mean that Sean needs to lose another cryo as well. Oscar definitely within striking distance. This is an incredibly volatile game state with either player having a meaningful path to victory here.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out.
Again, as I was saying before, Sean getting to 25 points will keep Oscar off of his tail, but that includes him getting his auto score battle tactic for Bigwa, as well as scoring his grand strategy. Oscar will cap at 24 points even if he scores all the way through the remainder of this battle. So denying the grand strategy is a key out for Oscar here. Sean does not need a single primary point from this point onwards if he retains that grand strategy because his battle tactic is automatic.
Okay. Sounds good.
It's incredibly tight. Either player could come away here with the victory. I'll remind everyone in the audience that these two players are clubmates, practice partners, pals. This is a very tense game. But of course, I know either of them will be incredibly happy for the other if they were to walk away with the victory.
I have your names on a list here.
So right now, Pigs or Chancer, those are done. It's this. So he's doing, he did the retreat charge with Larkin, sending him here. He needs to do something about this unit to stop Sean's grand strategy. If Sean gets the grand strategy plus the automatic battle tactic from the lock, he automatically wins. That's his item.
Back up. Come back up.
We'll see how things go though. Oscar spawning the retreat and charge here, so he will be able to potentially. Ooh, Sean hitting a big 6-inch redeploy on Arkin's movement.
Jacob Berkowitz.
This is going to give Oscar potentially a 9-inch charge into the Brutes, which is incredible, and pushing Sean's unit even further to the point where they could even retreat into the far edge of the table and then pick up that grand strat. But if Oscar gets one combat into this unit, things get increasingly dangerous for him. Very, very crucial redeploy. See how things pan out. Nerves are high, both players playing an incredibly tight game, looking for that one and done win condition here at the end game. Oscar working on accomplishing his battle tactic, moving some other units while Sean completes the redeploy. Sean ecstatic at the sight of the 6-inch redeploy. Turn of fate here after some of the difficulties in his prior turns.
Paul Jones.
But staring down what Oscar is accomplishing on the table.
Paul Jones graciously let his opponent's result miss triggers. And you get a certificate. Matthew Goditis. You graciously reminded opponents of surge conversions, even when you didn't have to.
He needs a mortis in there. He walked the mortis right here, but he put the mortis in here.
And Jacob Berkowitz. Did you come back up here?
Yeah, they have to be on the side.
You
You may have seen a critical moment here in a second, which I will.
Thank you.
Are these here?
He's working.
He might be planning to charge.
I don't know. Okay.
I'll charge and then tag him behind back end.
Okay, back to the random.
Yeah,
back to the
could
random.
have just stayed there.
Aiden Patterson.
Sean doesn't need time.
Get on up
It's
here.
really. But I mean, it's a gamble. I mean, if Sean gets 25 by holding 2 objectives, I mean that is an out as well because it has a battle tactic. So, like, I could see the thought. It's a risk.
Marcus White.
Will give Oscar a minute here to get through the movement phase completely. Actually, looks like he may have completed the charge phase, but uniquely Oscar's battle tactic requiring that he has his unit of Mortis Guard contesting the same objective. With that charge, Oscar has dropped his battle tactic. Curious on the line of thinking there potentially a mistake.
Does anybody have a
Vincent.
plug?
I do.
Arcan.
Charging Arkin now. making a 6. That is not enough to make it presently. Oscar using a CP to call the reroll.
Nick Bonner.
7, not going to make it also. The redeploy working overtime. However, Oscar can charge back into the Ardboy unit. Just measuring it out, advancing, putting Arkin a little bit closer to the brutes. We did see the horses come closer to the brutes as well.
Matthew, good item. Again.
In an incredible show of sportsmanship, Sean has pointed out to his opponent that he may have dropped his battle tactic by charging out of position. Incredibly courteous of Sean, allowing Oscar to correct his charge, tagging the back end of his unit on the objective, retaining his battle tactic and keeping him in the game. Major props to Sean O'Shaughnessy.
I send these pictures to our sponsors so we get more prize next year.
Obviously, nerves can run high on these top tables. Mistakes can happen, but serious top tier sports here. We now have Zach McComb in the booth. Did you come away with the win in your game? Very nice. Zach McComb triumphing over Alan Knowles in their game. Big Wa against Slaves to Darkness. Zach finishing with a 4-1. How are you feeling?
I don't know.
He does not know, and we don't know either, which is why we asked the question. That being said,
we'll see how my sportsmanship pans out.
Yeah, we'll see how his sportsmanship. Well, we just saw an incredible show of sportsmanship as well on this table, with Sean identifying how his opponent could recover his battle tactic on the tail end of the game here when it does matter. Oscar needing that battle tactic to be able to catch up. So major props here. For your context, Zach, I know you just popped in.
Yeah, give us a rundown.
Yeah, he had charged in the Immortus Guard onto the leftmost side of the pig. He had called the Sculptor's battle tactic, which requires them to be on the same objective as the Mortison. Later in the turn, Sean spotted it. Oscar had rolled a 12 to charge and called it out and said, hey, I want to make sure you're not fighting this up here. Put your unit on the objective. Allowing Oscar to correct it, capture the battle tactic.
The pinnacle of sportsmanship is Sean O'Shaughnessy.
Yes. Peak courtesy right there. You know someone is a true sportsman when their behavior does not change when they are playing for all the marbles. The same at table 1 as you are at table God knows what. Rolling through. Sean out of CP. Oscar looks like is activating the Immortus Guard. Looks like he may only have one though due to the nature of the charge into the Gore Apprentice here, so we'll have to see what happens. Now the horses did make it into the brutes. The brutes going to be able to pile in, do a meaningful amount of damage. Oscar debating which way he needs to activate here. Oscar activating the Ossifector into the War Chanter. Curious to see how the brutes do into the horses at the top. It looks like Arkin may have gotten stuck on the one remaining Ardboy who'll have to make a battle shock test. Of course, Arkin can retreat and charge, but this will offer Sean the ability, unless another unit picks it up, to pick up a primary point in the final battle round here, pulling himself away from Oscar, potentially. You see the War Chancer come off the center objective here. That is now firmly Oscar's. Sean had obtained it in a previous turn with a model score of 15 to 15 on the objective after a brutal series of combats from Oscar and a tough battle shock from Sean. Looks like we see some saves coming down. appears to be from the Immortus card, into the Gorgruntas. We'll see how they hold up under the pressure. Worth noting, however, that Sean is going to hold that far objective. Oscar stretching between the two. We had talked about this before, but straddling two objectives, potentially very powerful in Age of Sigmar, being able to choose which you are contesting on a given turn. Oscar stretching between the two will allow him to contest the center objective currently for his battle tactic, but then swap it to the leftmost objective in a future turn. Oscar also controlling the rightmost objective with Arkin currently. Sean does not have any models on it at this point in time. He will be able to pile in an Ardboy on it. One Gorgrunta being removed on the leftmost objective now.
Are the points currently accurate that Oscar's ahead by 6?
No, it's the opposite.
Oh, it's opposite?
Yeah, this is Sean, player 2.
So Sean has 20.
Sean has 20.
So Sean is up by 20. Oscar behind by 6.
Where do you see 6?
11. Oh, 9. My mistake.
20 minus 11.
There's a reason why I don't teach
players.
math.
Yeah, Zach is a social studies teacher, not a math teacher for obvious reasons, completely unable to subtract 11 from 20. It has been a long weekend here, math incredibly difficult.
So, with the point difference as it is, but seeing the current board state, who do you think is currently going to pull ahead at the bottom of 5?
It's going to depend on this trial. It really depends on where these brutes end up.
Really? What an exhilarating game. The bottom of 5 of the final game of Golden Sprue.
Incredibly tight. Oscar looking to pick up a full 5-point turn here. I think we can go ahead and project that he will score that based on the current objective control, but of course we will wait until the Gorgruntas have gone. Stranger things have happened.
Oh, yes. You're minus 2. Okay. No, that's okay. That would have affected that. So 2 big 1.
Rolling through the activation now. This is the Orc Brutes into the horses. Sean hoping to roll through. Looks like they're correcting to account for the -2, but they had mistakenly not carried over with the Brutes. But walking through it, a +1 to Big Law. Of course, Sean is out of CP, so he has not rolled an attack, so he has net -1 on those Brutes. The specialist weapons hitting on 5s in this case, but of course the Gore Hackers hitting on 4s, wounding on 2s, and at -2. Don't believe... Actually, no. I believe the Brutes are currently... Actually, no. I think we're out of position. I don't think they have the damage buff at this point in time. So they have Noodles in hand. Sean rolling a bucket of dice for the Jagged Gore Hackers, praying to the heavens that this damage comes through.
Looks like a lot of misses.
Does look like a lot of misses. Those -1s to hit, incredibly powerful. Looks like 10 have made it through, but he will be wounding on 2, so his conversion rate should be substantial here.
Throwing his dice across the table.
Recklessly chucking his dice at his opponent, completely retracting any brownie points he earned for his immense show of sportsmanship just before. This may just come down to the turn 5 priority and the way in which Sean is able to keep those Brutes in the far end of the battlefield.
Looks like Oscar just had a wild roll.
Oscar has rolled a substantial amount of saves. Wards, rather. Looks like he had picked up 4 wards out of the 8 there. Holding the horses together.
Yeah, looks like he only lost 1 horse.
1 additional. He lost 2 from the specialist weapons as well. So he
Could
is
have been worse.
remaining with 2 horses. Oscar, very big on the OBR horses, much like myself, a Staliarch Lord's advocate. But of course, playing the Mortis Praetorians this weekend.
Ardboy goes down.
Single Ardboy has been dropped by Arkin. We'll see how things pan out here. Gorgruntas activating.
You can put it by my army.
Definitely an incredibly interesting board state. Sean effectively at 22, knowing he has an automatically scoreable battle tactic in his final turn.
It may come down to objective control, though. He is very weak on that currently. That may put him behind.
Yep. And of course, being able to pick up the Grand Strat if the brutes are able to withstand the combination of the horses and the Archon as well. A single brute in the end zone of that board means a 3-point swing. The battle tactic puts him at 25 and makes it physically impossible for Oscar to catch up. So we'll have to see how things pan out.
We still have some keys up here.
Oscar may have to win prio and hope for a lucky curse of years.
Yeah, maybe having to take pot shots at the end of the brutes on the far end, but it's not over for the Fat Lady Sings, who does still have a out.
Just looking at the board, I don't see.
Looks like Oscar is activating the horses. Including unit leader. We'll see how things transpire from here.
So then that would put them on end of turn 4.
Just a reminder as we head into our final turn here, I've been saying it throughout, I cannot emphasize this enough. These are two friends, club mates, practice partners. Incredibly proud of both of them. Our club is for making it as far as they have. Great shows of sportsmanship between both throughout the game. Very tight, potentially coming down to this singular prio.
11 to 20. Oscar 11. Currently, Oscar is playing the bottom, so he's still scoring. Yes, that's what I was saying.
Why don't you throw a tantrum, Sean? Maybe that'll help.
Players at tableside taunting one of the competitors, Sean O'Shaughnessy, being verbally assaulted from across the tournament
I didn't
hall.
think you had to clarify. I think that was a given. What? I'm sorry.
Sean says, I need no introduction. Of course the players are taunting me.
Oscar's just a kid. He's too young to taunt.
Brutes dropping off 3 models. 7 remaining, 21 wounds. Oscar scoring a full 5. That was the priority. It looks like Sean O'Shaughnessy did win that priority role, so we'll see how things go here. I'm going to take a moment just to get an update on the table and just confirm our understanding of the board state. Sean activating into the horses now on the far side, but he has called his automatic wall point battle tactic, meaning that with the Gore-Grunts retreating from combat, he is going to score 3 points here. So wait for it, lads, and the final turn here is going to put Sean to a score of 23. If Oscar scores his grand strategy and scores 5 points here, he will win by a single point. He needs to deny Sean's grand strat right now. Looks like the players are just making sure that they were talking things out previously, but just making sure they measure things fully, putting the Gorgonzas 9 inches away, doing everything on the up and up.
Alright, leader.
Four cannons like broad.
Sean all out attacking the brutes in the corner, and he is pressing his advantage, doing whatever he can into those 2 remaining horses. That way he is able to withstand the crackback from Arkin on the following turn, and hopefully a battle shock as well.
To be clear, just the check.
1, 2,
You do the same thing.
7.
So,
We'll see how things pan out here. This is incredibly tight. Oscar with routes to lose by the green strat or live by the green strat. So, an incredible game from both of these two, incredibly tight. Great shows of sportsmanship all around. One of these players walking away with their first 5-0.
That's my favorite roll. That checks out.
1-on-1.
3 next 2.
While the Iron Blasters just took care of it.
4 next 2. 1.
The lack of the War Chanter showing through here on the damage. Sean coming up short in combat. Oscar activating the single horse. No, horse is living. The brutes don't have the +1 to damage, so they are noodle fisting.
there, it was the fight.
What was that?
There's one.
It was 1 mark.
I turned the lights on.
Yeah, he killed like 1.5. Did 4 damage, I think, total.
My champion was also alive. He was the champion.
What was that?
I thought it was on 5.
Oh no, it is battle round 5. Correcting that. This is the top of battle round 5. It literally is going to come down to the very last turn and a singular combat after that battle. So we will see.
How did you take damage here?
How you feeling? People got long rides home, it's snowing out.
3.
Can't tell the top game.
Shaughnessy now at 23, looking to find a way to keep that grand strategy together. Gorgrunthus on the far edge of the table contesting one of the objectives, but that won't stop Oscar from taking.
What round
Is
you
he
guys?
intimidated yet? This is bottom
He has intimidated yet. Oscar has utilized magical dominance, intimidate the invaders, reprisal, and sculptors.
He
Yeah.
did intimidate.
Meaning to be entertained, but
Oscar selecting a battle tactic, the players confirming the list of tactics that have been utilized.
I just want to say I'm heading out. This was great.
Battle tactic and a grand strat away from a changed result.
I want them to have I just didn't want to make it. I just want to be 45 minutes. That's all.
This game is incredibly close.
Sean, I'll leave. I didn't do weekend.
Alright, yep.
Oscar doing led into the maelstrom.
Alright.
This means that Oscar is going to need to make a charge with a hero and a battle line unit and remain within 1 inch at the end of the turn. Likely going to send in Arkin, assuming that he will not take out the brutes and try to get the Mortis Guard into the Gorgruntas. Just needs one of them to still be standing within 1 inch of the unit. Of course, Oscar hoping to not outright kill either of these units. That will drop a tactic and also change the result yet again. There are so many permutations of this game that could take place right here, hinging on just a couple rolls. This is incredibly close. Oscar casting Curse of Years.
Did you have to take battle shot?
Looks like
Sure. I don't know.
Players thinking that Sean had missed a battle shock, but he did not lose a model on the brute unit last turn. Curse of Years coming out, taking out one of the brutes, leaving 6 left on the table. Sean needs only a single brute to live through this combat phase to clean up this game. Oscar needs to finish the unit of brutes, score this battle tactic, land 5 points on the turn, and deny. If he denies Sean's grand strat, he will win 24 to 23. Otherwise, O'Shaughnessy will come away with a 26 points.
In power network weapons.
Absolutely a nail biter.
I drained my salad.
With as many times as I've played the both of these two, as many times as we've seen both of these armies in the competitive sphere, there is nobody alive right now that can tell you who is going to win this game. There are many plausible ways in which this can go. Perhaps the odds slightly favor one or the other, but this is going to come down to the very final moments of the battle round. Oscar closing in on the brutes with Arkin. Seeing how far along he can make it.
16.
Moving 16 inches forward, coming in on the right side of the screen there. Placing the brutes in a pincer. That way, unless he makes a pretty low charge, they cannot move and get away. Sean moving forward. Considering a redeploy. Sean reviewing his potential options here, taking a look at the scoreboard before opting into the redeploy. Telling Oscar to pursue the turn, and we'll just think about this one here.
Arcan, just gonna charge.
Sure.
Oh no, I'm gonna retreat on my pony.
Are you just trying to count the score?
Yeah, I'm just curious.
For both players' awareness, it is 16 to 23 currently. Both players reviewing their outs here.
Arcan's gonna charge. Sure.
Likely to see a retreat and charge coming in from the horses as well. Oscar recurring a model. Get some charge mortals in here. Looks like he made a 6-inch charge with Arkin.
So Arcan got in. Yeah, we can try. Nope, I was just out. Yeah, let's just be one pony.
This is absolutely intense. These next couple activations are going to completely decide the course of this game. One of these players will be leaving with a sourpuss on their face.
Take 4 mortals.
Even with one?
Yeah.
Oscar with the single horse dealing 4 wounds on the charge, removing one of the brutes and passing on some damage onto the next model over. The Immortus Guard making their charge into the Gore Gruntas on the left of center objective.
Stomp.
Oscar will also need to keep one of those units within an inch for the battle tactic. One brute has dropped off.
I will let the bludgeon.
What's that?
+1 run.
Okay.
That may have been the monster's action. Now we see Arkin's activation here into the brutes.
Did you want to on defense?
Dropping one on the hit. One coming through on the wound at rend 2.
Sorry, rend 3.
Then it doesn't matter.
It's 2 each.
Okay. Just one. So 2.
2 damage on the brutes. The room is growing incredibly quiet as the players have gathered around the table to witness who will walk away with the victory here. This is the last game of the round, ongoing, fitting final for this event. We'll see who walks away with it in just a few moments. Spirit Host now activating.
Rend 2?
Because of your drain vitality. One each.
Yeah, she's all messed up. It's Johnson. Alright. What's the range on these guys?
1 inch.
Yeah, so I can just run away from you. Alright, and it's pointless.
What I do, pile is 6 inches.
6-inch pile. Yeah.
Sean realizing that with the horse 6-inch pile in, he will have to try to combat the horse.
2.
A singular brute versus a singular horse.
All out defense. What does Y do?
Extra attack.
How many attacks do you have? 4. 4 at rend 2.
Sean has called the Wa this turn, giving him +1 to his attacks characteristic.
Yeah, I have to.
Sean whiffing the attacks.
Oh, fucking game.
Now the horse. Can the horse do it? Horse hitting all 3 due to the explosion, but only converting 1. The brute has survived, and we have seen a handshake. What an incredible game.
Holy shit.
Whew. Oscar has dropped the Grand Strat due to failing to kill the brute. Sean picking up the Grand Strat. Oscar should still be able to potentially pick up the tactic here.
I need a lot of
Excellent game, incredible show of sportsmanship across both players. We'll give the players a few moments here to cool off and pick up their things, breathe a little bit, chat amongst themselves, and we'll see if we have the opportunity to pull Sean in for a brief post-game interview after his victory here. Sean O'Shaughnessy coming away with the victory in a nail-biter of a game, picking up his first ever 5-0.
Oh, yes.
An incredible game from both of these competitors, but with that, I will be right back. All right, we have Sean O'Shaughnessy with us in the commentary booth here, concussing himself on the way in, bouncing his head off the wall after a rigorous game of Age of Sigmar.
What do those headphones do for you? Why do you need headphones on?
I can hear myself.
You love the sound of your own voice so much.
Well, it helps me moderate volume
I
relative
know.
to the room. But that being
That's
said,
something I need to learn.
Sean, that was a hell of a game.
That was one of the craziest games I've played. That was one of the hardest games I've had. And I mean, to be totally honest, coming into it, obviously you're worried, right? Anything can happen, but just because Oscar and I played this matchup multiple times before. In fact, we just played it Friday night, and I tabled him top of 2, you know?
Oscar had talked about that. I didn't want to spoil it to those in the comments that you guys had played, so I knew you had the reps, but of course, anything can happen.
Exactly.
And sometimes you feel when you win a game so many consecutive times in practice, you feel like when it matters, can I replicate that?
Yeah.
But how do you feel first?
Well, I did want to say, so I mean, with that being said, I mean, he learned from it and did not make mistakes this time. You know, he learned what he did wrong, and Oscar always does it. He's a great study of this game. I know he's still somewhat new to the game, but I think, I mean, just because he's so smart with it, so dedicated to it, I mean, he's got limitless potential, whereas, you know, old people like me, I'm on the downhill. But Oscar, I mean, he'll be one of the, if not already, I mean, because he's the nicest person we know. I mean, I feel like we say that about all Age of Sigmar people, but
Oscar especially, I think, is probably the nicest of our clubmates.
Yes,
he's definitely nicer than either of
100%.
us.
Yeah,
Although I
yeah.
will say credit to you on the sportsmanship front as well with the Sculptor's battle tactic.
Sculptor's Battle, I don't know what
When
that
he
means.
had stepped the Immortus card off
Oh,
the objective on the card.
right,
You had
yes.
identified it to place it back. I had said
I didn't
on
know
stream that,
anybody picked
the
up
sign
on that.
of a good sport is when their behavior doesn't change, whether they're at table 1 or the very last table.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to win because your opponent forgot to move something an inch over. You know, that's just silly.
Top table nerves are high, but incredible show from you.
Thank you.
I know you and I have played a lot of practice
my
games.
goodness.
We have gone over iterations of your list. You've been putting in the reps with Big Watt. Incredibly proud of both yours and Oscar's performance. You coming off first 5-0, Oscar's first 4-1.
Yeah, a lot of firsts.
Good stuff, man. Now, is there anything you want to say to the audience back at home? I know you have some family in the chat. They're waiting with bated
Oh my
breath.
goodness, are they really? Oh man. No, I mean, just obviously, thank you to everybody that tuned in. I mean, it can't be that exciting, especially when you don't know, the game. I mean, it's hard enough for us to spectate games, even when we know exactly what's going on. You get a little bored, you need something else to do, and I mean, the fact that people would just watch your game or at the very least listen to it when they honestly have no idea what's going on. And goodness knows we're 7 hours of game time into this so far today. Obviously it means the world.
Good stuff, man. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank
in the booth.
you.
Go claim your prizes, and we'll chat more later.
Oh,
on this,
you know
I'm
we
certain.
will.
But with that, I am going to begin to wrap up the stream. I want to take a second here to thank everybody who has tuned in throughout all 5 rounds of coverage throughout the weekend. We appreciate your viewership. But of course, this is Tyler Bushy signing off on the DaBoyz Golden Sprue GT stream, where we have witnessed Sean O'Shaughnessy come away with his first 5-0 in an absolute nail-biter of a final game. Congratulations to both Sean and Oscar on their finishes. They played an excellent game. And thank you again to all the viewers. Until next time, have a great